Good evening. I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order on May 13th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this evening. Order number 24-1009160, communication from Mayor Dumas together with the proposed FY 2025 municipal operating budget in the total amount of $196,610,886. Which represents a 4.69 increase over the FY 2024 appropriations. I will begin by reading the letter submitted by the mayor. Dear Council President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your review and consideration is the proposed FY 25 operating budget in the amount of $196,610,886, which represents an increase of 4.69% over 2024 budget. I present to you a conservative budget that maintains the level services Marlborough residents are receiving currently. In your budget book, I have provided a more comprehensive budget narrative. However, there are a few important areas I would like to highlight and summarize below. Increases. The majority of the increases you see have to do with education funding and fixed costs. The Marlborough Public Schools operating budget includes a 5% increase. Assabet Valley Regional Vocational Technical School includes a 15% increase. Fixed costs that have risen are utilities, mainly electricity, retirement, and health insurance. The outlier in the increase in the reserve for salaries account, which is where we plan for the financial impact of 7 city collective bargaining agreements that expire this year. Reserve for salaries, as mentioned, the reserve for salary account was increased in anticipation of the upcoming collective bargaining agreements. In addition to that, with both the classification and comprehension study that is in progress, a collective bargaining with all units, we expect several recommendations for updated salary schedules and or potential reclassification of positions within the fiscal year. While we do not know what these changes might reflect, we budgeted the reserve for salaries account to fund any potential differences. Personnel, the FY 25 budget reflects a few personnel changes in various departments and nets a minus 1% employees from overall budget. In context, the proposed FY 24 budget saw a net of 5 new positions in various departments. 2 positions are being created within the budget, a communications director within the mayor's office, and a capital project manager within the Department of Public Works. The existing outreach worker position at the senior center is being returned to the city budget after being funded by the senior center's annual grant funding. 4 positions are being removed from the budget: treasury/payroll manager in the finance department, assistant commissioner of facilities, and assistant city engineer within the Department of Public Works, and the substance abuse coordinator within the health department. The substance abuse coordinator no longer needs to be funded through the budget, as there are available opioid settlement funds that can be funded through. In addition to the creation of 2 positions, I'm requesting an update to the salary schedule for the following existing non-union positions: DPW commissioner, assistant DPW commissioner, assistant engineer, city engineer, assistant library director, and reference librarian. The DPW changes are reflective of the succession plan that has been overdue for some time. These changes reflect competitive wages to retain and recruit personnel. Similarly, we have an individual in the assistant library director position who is maxed out on the step schedule, and the salary schedule itself has fallen behind other positions throughout the state. Our intentions is to retain this employee, who is not only a high-performing but contains wealth of institutional knowledge, revenue/financial outlook. Again, there is a more comprehensive explanation on my budget narrative. However, I wanted to provide a snapshot of the revenue financial outlook. Marlborough remains in a strong financial position with a positive financial outlook. New growth is estimated at $2 million, which is under the average for the last 3 fiscal years. Local receipts were conservatively estimated and are still expected to increase from this year's projections. State aid is estimated to increase between $1 million and $1.5 million from FY 2024, even given the Commonwealth's current financial outlook. It is my intentions to work with each of you to balance the needs of the departments, residents, and the desire of the City Council. This is meant to be a collaborative, public, and transparent process between us and the residents. I look forward to a healthy, productive dialogue with this body throughout the process. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our dedicated finance team and department heads for their hard work throughout this process. Department heads and I will be at a future Finance Committee budget meeting to answer any specific questions you may have. Sincerely, J. Christian Dumas, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
If you would like to continue the narrative and...
Yeah, I think that sums it up, but I mean, we worked very hard during the transition to meet with all department heads, and then once the budget came, it's really to focus on more on succession plan, to see what's working, what's not working over the last 5 months. That's why you see some positions that are no longer, and why we're adding some positions. I'm very dedicated to making sure that the city is running now, but also 5 years down the road. So I think that's why you see the succession plan with the DPW. This reserve for salaries is rather high, because obviously with union contracts, as well with some union positions regarding that succession plan. Electricity is higher, health is higher, water's higher, sewer's higher. So with all those increases, we had to make the following adjustments. Some positions or departments are level funded, some are not, and we're here to figure out what will work best for the city. So having said that, we can dive right in.
Okay, thank you. I will open it just briefly if anyone had any questions. Seeing Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as the mayor said, this is going to be a collaborative process. Just because something goes up or gets reduced doesn't mean things are good or bad, right? Every council needs to have ideas what they think the budget should be, all right? I've presented you with 2 documents that I wanted to give a quick overview because I talk about it during the Finance Committee meetings. I've got several calls over the last week on it, and I figured it'd be just better to put it down in writing so that you have it in front of you to refer to. So the first document, the 8-page document. So looking back on fiscal year '24, the mayor submitted a budget of $188 million, all right, or 4.57% increase. The council reduced the budget by $940,000, right? Everything worked just fine, right? Taxes went down because of those reductions, right? And the year before, we reduced the budget by $806,000. So basically what the council did was they approved a $187.8 million budget, or $7.3 million increase, or basically 4%. For fiscal year '25, right now, the mayor's budget is $196.6 million, or an increase of $8.7 million, or 4.69% increase. The council reduced it by $1 million, right, because this is where everybody kind of gets a little squeamish, all right? The budget would be 195.6. The increase would be a 7.7, still the largest ever in the city, all right? But it would reduce the tax. What the mayor has in the package is he anticipates the average household to see a $124 increase in taxes. If you reduce it by $1 million, just putting it in perspective, and so that you all don't lose your mind, my cuts aren't $1 million, all right? You'd reduce the taxes to $65 increase. And again, those are projections. So on page 3, the next page, those are the reductions we made last year, all right? And so what I did, I've highlighted in red how we did. Did we do good? How'd they go? So the first 2 were the assistant commissioner. We said, hey, new guy coming in, start the individual at step 1, which should be the case for all new positions. And there are several in this budget that I will bring to your attention as we go through it. But again, no impact on the budget. Electricity, we reduced it by $100,000, said, hey, do some conservation measures. They had to put additional money in because the rates went up. Maintenance of school, natural gas, Councilor Oram, that was your suggestion. Well done, I might add, all right? We had to add in $194,000, but again, all covered within the existing budget. Other government, reserve for salaries, we reduced it by $300,000. Again, no impact. We still have $57,000 in that account through April. Fire department, we kind of lose our mind. We're going to reduce overtime, it went fine. The understaffing ends up supplementing the overtime account, and they're at 146,000 with 2 months to go, and there's gonna be leftover money there, even though they transferred money in. Similarly with capital projects, we eliminated that account. In solid waste, we were able to reduce it based on last year's performance, and we've actually transferred out 128,000. So why do I bring this to your attention? The adjustments we make, everybody gets nervous about, we think it's difficult, but the world works just fine. City services are delivered, taxes are lower because of some of those adjustments, and our job is to determine where do we think any of those, if there's none, there's none. If there's some, okay. So now where are we with fiscal year '24 budget? So through April, we're $943,000 under budget in salary line items, under budget. Fiscal year '23, we finished the year $843,000. So why is that? We've had challenges hiring people, all right? But when you don't hire people, the money doesn't get spent. Internal transfers, we allow the departments to move money around. They've moved $1 million around so far, right? All within rules, all good, but the point is, we set a budget on July 1st, and they've already made all these changes. Not a bad thing, but what I'm telling you, what's in before you, the budget is good the day one we approve it. Day two, the budget changes, and it's okay. I mean, that's how budget works, but do we stay within that budget? That's the key part. I've also listed on page 5 all the open positions from the city's HR website. There's 20 open positions, all right? Just to give you, it's not Mike making up $943,000. These are unfilled positions that continue to accrue money because they're not being filled. Now, I know the mayor's working hard to get them filled, which is good. But the point I'm trying to make is the positions aren't filled right now, so we're underrunning the budget. There is room to adjust the budget. Page 6 and 7, I just put there, those are the month-to-month, the anal mic that keeps track of what Diane sends me of all the internal transfers, so you can see where money moves within the department. So what do I conclude out of all this? The fiscal year '25 budget is the largest budget increase, which is okay. I mean, it's kind of a function. The budget keeps going up, so it's gonna get bigger. But the budget is only as good as the day it's approved. And again, fiscal year internal transfers, we've done $1 million so far. Salary underruns, $943,000 through April. Mid-year transfers, we moved $1.2 million with very little free cash. It was mostly all internal transfers. And yes, we have fiscal year-end transfers coming. The council that reduced the budget, we reduced it $806,000 in '23. City worked just fine. We reduced it $940,000 this year. We're doing just fine. City services are continued to be delivered. Reducing the budget now starts it at a lower value. If we didn't reduce $940,000 last year, we'd be starting at $940,000 base budget, and the mayor would then build upon that. So reducing the budget helps lower the taxes even further. Underruns in the budget will continue, and they can be used to transfer funds around. It just is, it's just how it works. So I'm just trying to set the table that it's okay, you know, if you want to reduce something, the city will do just fine. So set a budget that funds the needed services that the taxpayers can afford, right? I mean, that's ultimately our job, all right? So just think about that. And the last document I gave you, the 3 pages, those are my suggested adjustments. They're less than $940,000 from last year. And as we go through them, I will highlight it. I'm hoping you've all gone through and done similar type exercise. If you want, if you're happy with the budget, that's okay too. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very good points. What we can do, we'll start with the page flipping. We can start at the City Council on page 13. And that was, on that particular line item for administrative, that was, we took that in under suspension to the, on the last Monday night meeting for the revised part of that. So that total line item now would be back to $239,745. Seeing any question, oh, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're at the beginning of the meeting, I'll just ask for some clarification. Barring any questions on each department's line, would you be entertaining a motion
That would be
to?
good. Absolutely, Council Brown.
Okay, so barring any questions from my fellow councilors, I would move to approve the FY25 City Council budget.
Do I have a second on that? Second.
Oh, sorry, as amended.
As amended,
Yes.
as amended for that amount of $239,745. Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the city council budget. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries 5-0. Moving on to the next item, which is the mayor's budget on page 15. Any questions on this line? Oh, Council Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the fourth line down, there's a new communication director at $73,000. If we still have to do the advertising, we still have to approve the salary ordinance. Should this be a 0 and then it gets added in? Or if we approve this, have we automatically approved the salary ordinance? It seems like we tried to do it the right way, but now it still seems like we're doing it backwards.
I believe we would still eventually have to approve the salary ordinance. Mr. President.
If I may, so Council Roby, so it's premature, if there's no appetite for the position, or there is, that's what the purpose is. If there is, we have till July 1st to get the salary ordinance in. So if something changes, we can. Remember, 6 votes to approve the budget, 8 votes to approve the salary ordinance.
So the line and the amount would be in the budget, it would be approved in the budget, but if we don't approve the salary ordinance, the money can't be spent, but it's still in the total budget?
It would then be money that the mayor can use to spend something else.
Good point, Mr. President, yes.
Okay, so
So just for clarification, I put it in the budget because based upon the last conversation during finance, you wanted to see what it would look like within the budget. So that's why it's included. We worked very hard to listen to all the concerns about what this position entails. If I can shed some more light on the position, this wasn't a position that was kind of a bait and switch. There was no intention to dupe the city council to say, hey, we need this position to continue with the website. That wasn't the case. We took this position based upon the needs of what the office needs. Being in the office for a few months, we realized that no one had ownership of the website. So if we have this new website, who's going to maintain it? Because there was no ownership. I wanted someone who spoke Portuguese in the mayor's office. Because so when we do community outreach, there's a huge Brazilian population that needs that. I'm very fortunate to have Heather, who does speak Spanish, but there's no one that speaks Portuguese. There's a lot of road closures, new construction, water main breaks that are not being identified to the residents, which is why we wanted to have this position, is to streamline the communications. There is a communication group that meets every month, but there's no one who has ownership of that group. They just meet, they talk about maybe posting some things, but there's nothing of ownership or streamlining that position. So that's where this position kind of evolved and kind of grew, because it was a basic need, and my office needs more support staff at the end of the day. There's only 2 of us. Everything should be coming through the mayor's office. We just don't have the bandwidth to continue the proper communications as well as the day-to-day outreach that I believe the mayor's office should entail. In no way is this for me, for my own personal propaganda or for me to get elected next year. I believe that this is what the residents of Marlborough want. I think a big proper example of that would be with the boardwalk rollout. If you're on social media, if you actually talk to people, that rollout wasn't identified properly because there was no communications director to streamline that information. There's a lot of misinformation because there's a lack of proper information that's out there. That's where this position stems from. I'm willing to work with the salary ordinance to get this position in. I just need more direction from the council as to what you are all looking for regarding that. I know that some people will think it belongs in IT. I don't think that's the case. It should be more internal for the mayor's office. There is sensitive information. My office works around the clock. That's kind of the idea of why this position stemmed from the mayor's office, because it's watering breaks that happen in the morning, late at night, on call. That's how it all stemmed from this position. I just want to make sure that we're all clear with that. I know that it came down, it wasn't presented well, and that's on me, and I apologize for that, only because as a new position, you kind of get lost with thinking like, oh, well, why wouldn't they want this position? Because I think it's a basic need that everyone would want. So my assumption was like, oh, they'll just approve it, not knowing the backstory, explaining how this actually came to fruition, and that's on me, and I apologize for that. It was a huge learning lesson to have you all more involved and for that transparency, and so that's why we put it back into the budget for the communications director. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll leave that up to the Finance Committee to make a decision on the mayor's budget. Councilor Facilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do still have several concerns about this position, and that's why tonight I would move to decrease account number 50592, Comms Director, by $73,000.
Motion has been made to reduce the line item 50592 from the mayor's budget. Do I have a second on that? Second has been made. Motion is made and seconded to remove that $73,000 from the budget. Any further discussion? Councilor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, good evening. As noted, you know, your presentation, in my view, indicated the needs of having a communication person on your staff. Unfortunately, I'm not for sure if you're going to get the votes tonight, but I would ask, if you don't, that you come back through the process, you know, and hopefully you'll go through the channels and get approved. I support it, but I don't know if the rest of my colleagues will. I don't have any issues with the fact that you need staff. A city of this size, I agree with you 100% that you need additional staff. I'm not here to argue that it's not needed. I'm here to support it. So my opinion is that I will support it tonight, and I expect that you won't be spending this money on anything else but
No, this
was mentioned.
This is what's needed for the office. I have no
Is
desire to
that
spend it any other
we
way.
have to trust our mayor as well, and I trust you're not putting it in here to spend it on something else. So, again, I support the position. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I do support this position. I think there's two parts of this conversation. First is general communications, channel strategy, getting messages out. I think that that's critical for providing, you know, transparency to the community. Now, as far as the website goes, and Mr. Gibbs, this is not a diss to you whatsoever, but the IT department works with tools and infrastructure. Excuse me. That's different than content, okay? You know, it's, you know, when we're talking about a webmaster, we're focusing on content and consistency. What you look at our website right now, you'll find in different departments, different organizations, there is inconsistency. It makes it harder to find things, because if you're used to one department, you go to another one, it's a different set of rules, because you don't have this type of central, you know, communication structure that would be the web. So if you're going to get rid of the communications director, then I think that the city council has to pony up and become the webmaster. And I'm serious about that. We're just getting in a part-time person. This is, you know, to manage it takes time and effort. And we can't leave it to the guys with the tools, because it's like they're focusing on a different part of this. We're talking about content here. And if we don't have a webmaster, then it's just going to be chaos on our webpage. And it's important to have that. Whether or not it's going to be in the council, or whether or not it's going to be in the mayor's office, I think it makes more sense in the mayor's office, in this case, a perfect example, because there's other parts of communication that would also be related to this. So I hope you folks reconsider getting rid of this line item, because it's important to have, because that provides a degree of flexibility and transparency, getting information out to our constituents. Thank you.
Councilor Preciado.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, I would agree that this position is important to the city, and I would urge the Finance Committee to reconsider it as well. Like you mentioned, it is incredibly important to be able to communicate with our constituents, especially people that don't speak English, which is a pretty large population of the city. And if we're not communicating with our residents, then we are failing them in every aspect. The boardwalk is just a tiny, tiny example of how that failure can be much bigger in terms of, whether there are like emergency services that are needed or whatever it may be. That's also important to, be able to keep that website updated in multiple languages as well, because it is also the only way we really communicate with the city in general. So I do urge you to come back with this position in some kind of capacity if it doesn't get passed today, because I agree with Councilor Doucette and Councilor Rum. It's I think vital for a city this size.
Thank you. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everyone on this council has to understand that this is a $73,000 position, but it's also a full-time position. So when we all get said and done, it's going to be a six-figure increase to the budget with all the benefits. I'm not saying that everything the mayor said was a valid statement. I'm not real sure if it deserves a full-time status right now. Had he come in with a part-time status and we assessed whether or not the need was there with a part-time communications director, because it's a brand new position. So why don't start off with a half-time position, and if they can speak Portuguese and Spanish, that would be awesome as well, and then assess, and then if it needs to be a full-time position, we reevaluate it at the next budget. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving, Councilor Facillo.
Mr. Chair, through you, can I ask Councilor Vital Lopez a question?
Yes.
Are you a full-time at AMSA? Is your position a full-time position?
Is my position?
Yeah, at AMSA.
I have 8 of them. Which ones are you
I
making
believe you're
reference
an
to?
outreach coordinator at AMSA, correct?
That's a
Is that
full-time position.
Full-time position?
Right? Yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, that's what I'm looking for the city. So, if AMSA has one and does outreach, so I guess the disconnect that I have is the reason why there's a Portuguese connection is because there was a business here that was not able to get building permits for 6 months because they didn't understand the process, because they didn't feel comfortable enough with someone who spoke Portuguese here in the city. For me, that's not great economic growth. There's another establishment who we utilized through the connections with MADC who does speak Portuguese as well, and we utilize that as well. But there's no one in this city who can cross that bridge when it comes to economic growth there as well. So if you have a city that actually takes pride in the community that they have, then you're going to see more economic growth and a stronger community overall. And I think that's what's missing. So that's why the outreach is so important when it comes to another language. And then we just tied in other needs that my office needs to have to maintain the information that the residents, I believe, want. I mean, my last Chat and Chew was this past weekend. There was about 70 people there. I can't tell you how many people were thankful for the newsletter. And the newsletter probably takes about 10 to 15 hours a month to create. It's all hyperlinked, the graphics are there, the verbiage, it's not something that you just whip together and send out. It's a detailed process to get department heads involved, to get that information, streamline that information, put it also, it's in a correct form and easy on the eyes, and then send it out. So when you're talking about 10 to 15 hours for the newsletter alone, yeah, my office can maintain it, but it's not sustainable month after month after month with a workload of 2 individuals. So again, that's why everything is kind of compacted into this position, because it's based upon the needs of what I believe the residents want, but also the needs of my office.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Facillo, you had a question?
Just some information, if I may. I completely agree that outreach to the community is probably the biggest thing that the mayor's office, any of us city councilors could be doing. I think that's probably our first job. But I also understand that as presented, this isn't an outreach coordinator. This is a communications director. And so from my perspective, I understand that there are a lot of similarities, but I don't fully support it. I also went back and I looked at our city's Facebook. We've had graphics posted for the boardwalk ribbon cutting, road closure graphics, snow emergency animated graphics, Small Business Saturday tour, which you've done. And I understand that that takes a lot of time, but I also understand that those are things we're already doing. And so I have a tough time supporting this if we're already doing these things.
Thankfully, my chief of staff works about 70 hours to 80 hours a week, making sure that information goes live. And we're actually missing a lot of road closures and water main breaks that you do not see because we don't have the bandwidth to post.
I'm going to go to President Ossing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I do not support this position. I encourage the Finance Committee to not support this position. You're 5 months into the job. Learn the job. Every other mayor before you has been able to do it. Try it. If you come back a year from now and say, I can't get it done with concrete examples, I'll maybe reconsider. But at this early stage, I think it's premature to hire a $73,000 person that can speak Portuguese. We can do that a lot better. The newsletter, quite frankly, it's a bunch of links, Mr. Mayor. Once you do it once, you're just copying the same thing unless there's something new. I appreciate what you're saying, but I will just philosophically disagree on that. So I would encourage the Finance Committee not to eliminate this position.
Thank you, President. I'm going to go to Councilor Preciado, and then we're going to move on. Councilor Preciado.
Mr. Mayor, how much time does your staff spend communicating or using the website to post things or to inform the public?
I can get the breakdown. I don't even know. It's quite tedious.
And it's just, I'm assuming it's not you that does it, it's your other two staff? Okay, so I would imagine that might take some time, because I do notice we get emails about water main breaks and the like that are not posted publicly.
Right.
So it makes it difficult for councilors to be able to communicate with their constituents. Say the water main break is on Main Street, how do I contact all my constituents other than an email that I might have gotten from them, you know?
Right.
So it is, I'm just wondering how much, you know, we're spending on communicating with the city if we can have a position that would take over those hours.
Yeah, and
I
we
think
have a
it would make
robocall
sense.
feature that we don't utilize either because, again, no one mans that. So that's a matter of just dialing out to people that want that information. So if Lincoln Street's closed, then if people want that type of communication, then they can sign up for it and utilize that. That's not being utilized, that we pay for that service as well. So there's a lot of things in this city that we don't utilize to its full advantage because, again, no one has taken ownership. And for me, that should be addressed. But.
Sorry. I also have some experience with getting, you know, permits or whatever at City Hall with a Portuguese-speaking constituent. There's a business owner off of Main Street that had some very difficult times trying to get an awning up on his business for months and couldn't figure it out. He would get sent back and forth because he didn't speak English fluently. It wasn't a strong language for him. So I could see how that could be frustrating and maybe off-putting to people that want to do business here. So that's just another one of my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Good points. Quickly, Councilor.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask a question on how we're going to vote on this, because are you going to split the communications director separate from the full vote? Because if you don't,
The motion has been made to reduce.
okay, and then you'll have a final vote on the
Yes, the motion has
budget.
been made, yes.
And then just one other quick comment. I see this position interacting not just with the mayor's office, but building department, as well as many other departments that, in my view, could use someone knowledgeable in a different, in the language, the Portuguese language, or Brazilian Portuguese. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. So the motion has been made and seconded to reduce the line item 50592 for $73,000. All in favor? 1, 2, 3. All opposed? It carries 5-2.
3 to 2.
I'm sorry, 3-2. Thank you. And now to approve the remainder of the mayor's budget as submitted.
Go.
Councilor Rowley?
I I guess I had the same question, although I'm not sure if I'll make a motion at this point, on the mayor's expenses. I don't really see any change in what is happening at your office versus last year. There is no inaugural expense, which is zeroed out. So can you explain why you're asking for additional expenses in the mayor's expense line?
Yeah, we took the average of the last 3 years, and the past administration has come back twice to add more. So based upon the expenses regarding the senior barbecue, the Horribles Parade, the employee appreciation lunch, so with the food costs that are rising with that, so we don't want to have to come back and ask for mid-year transfers with that. So that's why we just level funded based upon the increases for the mid-year transfer.
So you mentioned the senior luncheon, the Horribles Parade, and what was the?
Yeah, so what comes out of my expenses, so then everything that comes out of my expense account is this barbecue, senior barbecue is included in that, the employee lunch for appreciation. Then we have water in our office, a water bubbler, and then I get a stipend of $250 a month for a car.
Okay, and I
That's
guess I've never been aware exactly what comes out of those line items. We don't really see an expense report from the mayor's office. It's just a line item. So I'm surprised, especially at your mentioning the Horribles Parade.
Yeah, so it's like candy for that.
As city councilors, when we do it, it's out of our pocket. Why is the mayor's done?
That's the way it's
Under the
always been
cities.
done, so.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it's more, again, that
Council Giuseppe.
community outreach,
Okay.
but, yeah.
Council Giuseppe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It surprised me, but basically, how did the parking clerk charges of almost $3,000 end up under your pocket?
It's a stipend that the parking clerk gets.
Parking for guests?
The
Parking clerk is actually an item in,
It's a position.
It-
It's a
if I can-
parking clerk. is
it's
not
a
a
stipend
It's a
position.
stipend that goes to a
Stipend.
parking clerk.
okay,
So if you have a ticket that you want to fight, it goes to the parking clerk, and there's actually a position. So it's Lou Torrio, he was a police officer, he has the position, and it's a stipend that goes to him.
okay, and it goes into the
It's
mayor's
a
office.
complete
I
separate
was just
line.
surprised it wasn't in the police department, that's all.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Mr. President?
So I would ask this finance committee to make a motion to level fund the mayor's expense item by reducing $1,100. I went through the whole discussion. There's always money to move money around if needed. And to level fund it and also just come in and say you need more money, I don't think sets the right tone. So I would ask the finance committee to make a motion to level fund the expense line item.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, we did it so we wouldn't have to come back, but I understand your point, so.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move to level fund the line item for mayor's expenses to what it previously was in the FY24 budget of $8,900.
$8,900. Motion's been made. Do I hear a second? Motion's been made and seconded to reduce the mayor's expense budget of line item 54230 to level funded. That would be a minus of $1,100. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to the finance, sorry,
You want to wrap up the total value?
yes, sorry. Oh, Councilor Robbie.
Thank you. Mayor, you are increasing the summer employment by $2,000. So as you indicated, this year's June employment is paid in this fiscal year's budget.
Correct.
The next fiscal year would start July and do the same thing end, so June. So are you hiring more people? Because if you stagger them, it doesn't, unless you're moving money into this year's budget, you can't hire any more than you've got to pay for in June. What,
It's just the dates that the payroll calculate for this fiscal year. So when we did the math and did the actual payroll,
Yes.
it comes out to be the difference. And so that's the reason why that there's an increase.
But it almost sounds like you need more money this fiscal year, not next fiscal year. Or, because it depends on how many interns you have. You don't, and you probably don't even know yet how many have applied, and
We have that, yeah, we probably have about 15 already, and the
So
deadline
you
ends
would-
the end of the,
you would budget based on how many you need. So are you increasing the number from what you currently have?
it
Because
depends on how many applicants that we get. If we can increase it, then we will, because there's many departments that would love to have an intern, but we've just been limited.
okay, that's what I just, it doesn't say you want to get more. It was just talked about the payroll portion, which
Right,
I
and
wasn't
so
really sure what
Next
that
June
meant.
would still be fiscal year '25.
Right.
As well, so that would have to be included in this fiscal year.
Which to me sounds like you're hiring more, or you anticipate hiring more people. Because the
Based on-
salary hasn't changed.
Right, well, based upon the pay structure, if we want to have it all this summer and then start in June, we have some left over, but not much, because we have to wait. So we need to hire for the start of June of 2025.
Counselor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the summer employments, those are all part-time positions?
Part-time, correct.
Part-time,
Yep.
okay.
But we also opened it up to people who are not necessarily going to college as well. So if they took a gap year and they want to extend through September, they can as well, so.
We're talking about an increase of around 3.5%. That could just be a couple of additional hours every week or something. It's not necessarily a new position, because it's a very minor increase, so.
Right. Well, I have a newsletter to put out now, so I need an intern to do it, so, yeah.
Counselor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unless there's any further discussion, I move to approve the mayor's budget for FY '25 with the adjustment taking out the $73,000 for the communications director and taking out $1,100 to level fund the mayor expense line item.
Thank you, Counselor Brown. My number's right, that remainder of $329,000? And $2, thank you. So motion's been made, I will second that. Counselor Vial? Second motion. Okay, motion been made and seconded to approve the mayor's budget for $329,000, $329,002. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Good job, thank you. Okay, moving on to the finance director, page 17. As a reminder, this line item has been decreased in the budget. So if there's no further, any questions on this, I will entertain a motion. Counselor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve the FY '25 budget for the finance director line item.
Motion has been made. I will second that to approve the finance directors on page 17's budget. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to page 19, the auditor. Any questions for the city auditor? Counselor Ficillo.
I don't have any questions. I would just move to approve the auditor's budget as presented.
As presented. Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the auditor's budget as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Moving on to page 21, the assessor. That, obviously, that line item has been, that budget has been decreased. I know, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for going forward with that for the consulting fees and all that, so that has come down. I appreciate that. Any questions in regards to the assessor?
I still did that even though that 5 extra hours was not approved. I would just like the record to reflect that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Facillo.
I would make a motion to approve the Assessors Department as presented.
Motion's been made. I will second that to approve the Assessors Department as submitted, as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to page 23, City Collector.
Bless you. Mr. Chair,
Mr. President.
if the Finance Committee doesn't have any questions, I would recommend reducing the collector's salary line item of step 1, which would be a reduction of $4,643. And again, we did this last year for, they're left over, but the individual's gonna start at step 1.
At
so
step 1.
There's no sense putting extra money in the budget.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the city collector's FY25 budget with the adjustment President Ossing made to the salary, bringing it to step 1.
And that reduces it by $4,643. Motion's been made. Motion's made and seconded to reduce the city collector's budget by $4,643. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Next is legal on page 27. I personally have no questions in the, on the legal part of the budget. I will entertain any questions. Councilor Brown?
I actually did have just a couple questions, and it has to do with,
Good evening, Mr.
thank you,
Solicitor.
Mr. Solicitor.
Mr. Chair, so while the solicitor comes up, you need to approve the total for the city collector of $207,775, which is the reduction of the $4,643.
Thank you, Mr.
It's the new total. Okay, $207,775.
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Brown.
I move to approve the collector's FY25 budget for $207,775.
Motion been made, and I will second that to approve the collector's budget with that stated amount. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, questions for the city solicitor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. I was just wondering about, so looking back to the FY23 actual spending for the last couple of line items for office supply expenses and claims and judgments, I was just wondering if what you're projecting to use for this current fiscal year hits closer to the amounts that we're budgeting for the next fiscal year.
Sure, through the chair. So in this current fiscal year, and a lot of what we have in particularly claims and judgments and legal services is not, we're budgeting and we're trying to anticipate what matters may come up. I think we're gonna be pretty much landing it right on the mark in terms of the budget. So a lot of years, and you may see in those years where we'll do internal transfers to try to, maybe there are less claims in a particular year, but we have labor matters going on that require outside services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Solicitor. With that said, I have no further questions, and I move to approve the legal department's budget for FY25.
Motion's been made. I will second that to approve the law department's budget of $431,406. Any further discussion? Council Vital.
On a similar note to claims and judgment, the office supplies from the actual cost in fiscal year '23 was just just short of $6,000. And over the last 2 years, it was budgeted for twice that amount of money. Explain why?
Sure, so through the chair, that line item is primarily used for if we have fees where we're either using a constable to serve legal papers or recording things at the registry of deeds. What has happened in the last couple of years is if the legal services line is running close to the budget, we will do an internal transfer from that expense item to, instead of coming down for additional funds, right? That's sort of our first move that we would do there.
Council Orm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just good summary from FY '22 through '24 of the services provided. Everything's going down, I noticed, so if we continue to see that, say, in FY '25, when you give another update next year, hopefully parts of the budget will go down accordingly, so hoping to see that. Thank you, but thank you for the summary. It's helpful to see how.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor. Motion's made and seconded to approve the Law Department budget. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to Human Resources on page 29. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of similar questions for Human Resources if someone's here.
Good evening, Director Purple.
Thank you, Director. Thank you and welcome back. I had the question very similar to the one for legal, was that in FY '23, the office supply expense, the actual spending was $3,200 out of a $10,000 budget, and then it was level funded to $10,000, and I see there is a decrease in it. So is the $7,000 more indicative of what?
Yes, we use that for all of our expenses in our office, and we're looking at it for this year and feel that that's more appropriate in the number.
And then I guess it's a similar for the conference and training. I see that that also saw a decrease. So to me, it looks like you were being mindful when you were reviewing it, but just to kind of say it out loud on the floor, because there was about half that amount spent in FY '23, where I guess is the training happening right now?
So a lot of trainings have gone online. We do wind up having the percentage of the MMA trainings or state associations. They do a lot more online training that don't have a fee associated with it. With that in mind, we also have a lot of department heads and staff that go for annual training or certifications that they need to keep up. So we're trying to keep that balance. Expenses have gone up in regards to going to those events, but we're trying to balance it out for this year.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate it.
Good question, Councilor Brown.
And sorry.
Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's hard to find my desk with all this paperwork around, but hello, Christine. Thank you for your summary of the year, and I presume the contracted services are going up based on the workers' comp program that you're using? I call it Future Comp?
No, that actually, the contract services is completely different. That's where we do like our testing for the police and fire. Workers' comp actually, contract services come out of the worker comp account.
Oh, okay.
So this is more contracts that we, for services that we use to mainly run our public safety promotional or entry exams, and there's a lot associated with each of those.
That's understandable, and from
Yeah.
looking at their budgets, it appears they're trying to attract people, especially the
trying.
police. The other note, too, is hopefully this workers' future comp will help ease up some time, because I noticed you stated you'll be starting the process of having a compensation study done for city employees.
So, yes, and that was prior to my arrival. They signed a contract with the Collins Center to do a comprehensive pay classification and job descriptions. That was in the last, I don't know when actually the contract was
The
signed.
last year.
Within the past 6
Previous
months. In the
administration
previous,
signed that.
yeah.
So that's where the contracted services went up, I presume? That,
Contract services was
It-
level.
it's level funded, but from FY '23.
It's because we hired more police and fire and had
It's still back
some
to the
more.
police
It
and
really
fire.
truly is where we manage our public safety promotional and hiring out of, and that entails quite a bit of pieces.
Where's the money coming from for,
We got a grant.
We have a grant.
that's even better news.
Yes.
And last comment, expect completion of classification study. Thank you, looking forward to seeing that when
I
it's
am
ready.
too.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Council Vital.
If there are no further discussions, I'd like to make a motion to accept the budget as presented.
Motion's been made. I will second that for the Human Resources budget in the amount of $336,427. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Christine. Okay, moving on to Information Systems, page 31. Any questions in regards to the Information Systems line item? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Can we get Mr. Gibbs up front? So, thank you, Mark. So really, two questions. In the summary, you were talking about the price increase in Microsoft software. How much, you locked in like a 3-year contract before that then expired? Is it now an annual renewal, or are we in another?
It's the same 3-year.
Huh?
It'll be a 3-year as well.
3 years as well? Okay.
Yes.
So we're locked in for the next 3 years?
Yes, and that's mainly Azure. It's not mostly the M365. It's mainly Azure, the online storage.
Cloud service.
Yeah, cloud storage, all our servers, VMs are all, a lot of them are up there. So, and plus the time and attendance software. So a lot of the DPW employees and stuff all needed new licenses, so they were all licensed now to do the time and attendance. So that was a big increase there. It was like another 25 to 50 licenses.
Okay. Data processing supply, is that the Azure software? Or
It's the same computer software line.
So that's still basically a Microsoft charge, the data processing supply for cloud services? Is that, I'm just trying to understand if that's the one. Because your data processing supply jumped from 17 to 77.
No, so the data
Page
processing,
32,
no.
right?
So the data processing supply increase is an increase of $70,000. I think it's $77,000, which is due to the hardware purchases.
Okay.
For PCs, computers, cameras, antennas, wireless antennas, all kinds of hardware antennas. In the past, I used to submit requests for PEG money. And we used to purchase all that hardware equipment through PEG. And in the past 2 to 3 years, we haven't been purchasing or getting any local hardware equipment, so we're very behind on PC upgrades, laptop upgrades, cameras, screens, all kinds of things.
Okay, so the data processing supply is actually more of a hardware charge than a service
Yes,
or a
yes.
software charge?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Council Vital?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gibbs, 336% increase in data processing.
Yes.
How are we going to ensure that we don't continue to have that type of increase year after year?
So we my department came through with a 5-year process of recycling the hardware, and that's the number we came up with. So that's the number that's gonna stay there for at least 5 years.
336% increase every year?
No, it's the 77,000 that's in there, and then it stays at this price.
Oh, very
Yeah,
good, thank you.
yeah.
Council Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't know if the newer council members recognize the fact that Mr. Gibbs is in charge of IT at both the school and the city. So I'll ask my first question, which I think is the one I ask every year. Why is the school share of the information service director different than the city share? If shouldn't it just be an equal split?
Yeah,
One
my
person?
salary line, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think there was one year when Mr. Bergeron was the finance director that they didn't give the 2 or 3% increase or something like that. It was, they gave a bonus instead of that increase, so it was different. I've asked, I'm not sure why, but I think that's the reason why.
Okay.
So one year, they did a bonus instead of raises, and that's what it is. It was 50-50 from beginning on. For some reason, it just changed a little bit. I think it also has to do with their unions and the way they do their salary increases across the board. Maybe the city was different from one year to the other, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay, and I can tell from the schools, they have 1 network technician and 5 help desk people. So you have a chart. Are the
I do.
5 people that are on the right hand on your IT staff, those are the 5 that are at the schools?
The school and city, the help desk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are the 5 in the school department staff line, all of their salary comes from the school? Or is it a split? Because I can't really tell.
Okay.
If, from your list of, you don't have something called help desk.
Yeah, so there are 4 of them that are paid through the school, and 1's paid through the city on that line.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Roby. Council Orem.
I had the same questions as Councilor Roby just asked, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Oh, Council Fitzgerald.
I would, unless there's other questions, I would make a motion to approve IT's budget as submitted to us.
Thank you. Motion is made. I will second that to approve the Information Technology Department in the amount of $1,700,457. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director Gibbs. Moving on to the next one, City Clerk, page 34. Which also includes the elections on page 36. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't have any questions about either item, and so I am going to move to approve the FY25 budget as presented for the city clerk line item and the elections line item.
I will second that. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the city clerk's budget in the amount of $275,298, as well as the election and registration in the amount of $149,265. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Brown. Okay, moving on to page 38, License Commission. Any questions in regards to Licensing Commission? That is level funded.
Motion to approve.
So what's that, Council?
Motion to approve if there are no questions.
Motion has been made. I will second that to approve the License Commissions in the amount of $9,230. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, now moving on to page 55, which is the Police Department.
You're not doing property and building maintenance?
I'm sorry, what's that, Councilor Rose?
Oh, okay. sorry, I'm just going down this list, so it seemed like you. I'm not,
As noted in the police department, that is a decrease from the previous fiscal year. No questions, I will entertain a motion. Council Pacillo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion to approve the Police Department FY '25 budget as submitted.
Motion's been made. I will second that to approve the police department's budget in the amount of $9,102,168. Any further discussion? Councilor Orm.
Yes, not a question, but just a thanks to all the departments for your narratives. They're very helpful when reviewing the status of their budget as well as their needs. So I just want a thanks to the department heads.
Thank you. Well noted, Councilor Orm. Motion been made and seconded. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Moving on to page 59, which is the fire department. Any questions in regards to, Mr. President?
So, I mean, I'll wait for the Finance Committee, but I'll give the Finance Committee the first shot.
Thank you. Any, Council Orm? Good evening, Chief Breen. Council Orm?
Yes, in the summary of the budget, there was an increase of 23%. And I'm just looking at the percentages under fire captains and maybe a general overview of the increased need. It's
Good
line
evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
5800 line item.
Excellent question. I've received the same question from staff. So at the time of budget submission, Counselor, we are tasked with outlining each position, whether it's a firefighter, battalion chief, captain, lieutenant. And we currently have a vacancy in the captain's position. We typically staff with 4 captains. We only have 3 because we're conducting a promotional exam to fill that open position. So we are running with an extra lieutenant right now. Normally there are 8, there are 9. There are normally 4 captains. Currently there are 3. So while you see a decrease in the captain, you see an increase in the lieutenant. We will likely, when the position's filled, do an interdepartmental transfer to balance those 2 out. But the 2 numbers together equal what normally should be 4 captains and 8 lieutenants.
Okay, so that 12.5% should even out your captains minus 23%.
Correct.
Thank you. And the only other thing is, probably the same thing, you've noticed longevity, hazmat pay, both have gone down considerably.
So that's primarily due to the status of our personnel. So typically, personnel who have 20 or more years are entitled by contract to a higher level of hazmat stipend. Those with fewer than 20 years receive less than half of what the 20-year veterans get. So the longevity pay is related to younger personnel versus retiring seasoned personnel.
So it's a matter of the aging of your department. You have probably more younger people now that don't get the same hazmat contributions, longevity, all so it gets affected the same way.
Since my arrival in 2015, Counselor, I think we've hired, as fire chief, over 40 people.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions, Chief. Overtime and vehicle maintenance. I looked at last couple budgeted, what we budgeted the last couple of years and what was actually spent in fiscal year '23. Is, you know, the increase is 10%. I was just wondering why you felt that it needed to go up 10% since we were under budget the previous 2 years.
A lot of that, Council, is due to the fleet itself in terms of we do not staff a fire department mechanic who works days. It's actually a firefighter who comes in his off-duty time on overtime. So it's more a scheduling issue in terms of what needs to be done when the fire mechanics are either on duty or off duty, and the budget request for fiscal year '25 reflects an increasing need for his services based upon the fleet and our experience.
On a similar note, the call fire overtime went up in, a little over 11% from last year.
So, consistent with some of the internal reorganization goals that we have been working on for years, we have pledged to finally put in place a fire department training officer who would mimic a similar situation as the mechanic. While I don't think we're at a position where we can afford, although fire departments our size have done it, I don't think we can transition to a full-time training officer. What we'd like to do is we'd like to assign that task to somebody in an extra capacity, and that increase that you see reflects finally moving ahead with doing that. We have been trying to do that for years, but our priority was to establish a fire prevention bureau first. We had an all-officers meeting today, and not surprisingly, the biggest feedback we received is the lack of a formal, dedicated training program for all of our firefighters and fire officers. So in fiscal year '25, we are finally moving forward with a plan to put in place a training officer that would be funded by having somebody supported through an overtime increase.
And one last question, Chief, and my more veteran counselors may be aware of this, but I'm not. The increase in educational incentive, almost $20,000 from last year to this year, is that contractual?
It is, Counselor. So the educational incentives are paid contractually, and that's whether or not candidates, firefighters, attained degrees. So for instance, if you have an associate's degree, you're eligible for a certain percentage. If you have a bachelor's degree, you're eligible for a percentage. We're hiring an educated workforce, and it's reflected in our increase in that.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, how many open positions are in the fire department right now?
As far as authorized budget positions, just so happens, Mr. President, that today, we had 2 people starting at the fire academy. So if I count those 2 people, I believe right now we have 1 vacancy, which is the part-time clerk's position.
And regarding the clerk's position, it hasn't been filled for 3 years. What gives you, why should the council continue to fund it? Because those funds have been used to offset overtime and other salary-related items over the last 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate your question. I'd be more than happy to give you a little background. Historically, the details in terms of finally wanting to move ahead and fill that part-time clerk's position again, it's related to when I came here in 2015, we had that part-time records clerk. They work approximately 20 hours per week. Sometime in 2020, of course, at the surging cases of COVID, Marlborough Fire Department, unlike other city agencies, we shuttered, we closed. We literally could not sustain or retain that person while we had secured our facility and we were not interacting with the public. So that continued through COVID, and then we transitioned, as you know, with hiring our assistant chief. When the assistant fire chief retired, we replaced and we tasked the new assistant chief, Chief Emanuelson, with overseeing support services and establishing a fire prevention bureau. Many of you know, as councilors, we had a fire inspector's position that went unfilled for a long time. That was one of the primary assignments given to the new assistant chief in terms of establishing that bureau. We moved ahead with successfully negotiating that with the fire department union in terms of wages, working conditions, schedule, incentives, certification pay, things like that. We were able to finally complete that in September of 2023. We now have a full-time fire inspector on board. He has hit the ground running. He has attained multiple certifications. In fact, this month he's going to an arson investigation seminar. And so finally, to answer your question specifically, the part-time clerk's position as transitioning as part of the records clerk supporting the newly formed Fire Prevention Bureau, we felt that we were not going to move ahead and post that position until the fire inspector was hired and in place. We have posted that position. We have, I think, approximately 7 to 10 applicants. We're ready to interview. I'm aware that this was falling under the purview of the council, and that's why there has been a delay. But it's a critical position, and we look forward to filling that position.
And if you don't hire anyone this year, will you be coming back next year with this position?
We have every intention of filling that position as soon as the hiring authority to my right grants me the green light.
The point being, I mean, 4 years in a row without filling that position is not, I mean, to me, that won't show any, 3 years to me doesn't show, but I understand the COVID, so I give you the COVID hall pass. If you can't fill it this year, I'm saying you guys have been able to survive without it, there's real no need for it. Mr. Chair, if the Finance Committee would entertain, I'd entertain or suggest a $12,000 reduction in the call fire OT. They're just not, I heard the chief's explanation, I understand it, but we're just not spending the funds, and, you know, but right now, we're $218,000 under in salary in the fire department.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chief Breen, for joining us. I would like to move to approve the fire department's FY25 budget, less the $12,000 for the call fire overtime, and I will defer to you, Mr. Chair, for the math on that.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Motion's been made to reduce the fire department's budget item 51328 by $12,000. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. And a motion to approve the remainder of the fire department's budget, which would be $9,498,920. Councilor Fitzgerald.
I would move to approve the remainder of the budget.
I second that motion to approve the remainder of the fire department budget in the amount of $9,498,920. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief Breen.
Thank you all very much.
Moving on to page 62, inspections. This budget line item in the building department was decreased this year. That's good to see. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. I move to approve the inspectional services FY25 budget as presented.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the inspectional services budget in the amount of $1,059,787. Any further discussion? Councilor Orr.
Yes, I have a question on the professional contract services under inspections. So what I'm reading is, within the budget description, under code enforcement, it talks about utilizing professional services contract for compliance on code violations. Just a little history. I know you listed a few of them here: assisting police, rodent control. Commercial vehicle illegal parking is really my various interest. Your employee, Pam Wilderman, in my view, is overworked. She gets a lot from, and I sent it off to the Ward 6 councilor from my own neighborhood too, but what will that do to help Pam? Because I feel she's overworked and it's difficult to get enforcement. I've asked the police to entertain a police officer with her to help resolve some of these neighborhood issues. And I'm sure all the ward councilors would agree, as well as at large. We need to resolve commercial parking in residential areas. I'm just curious, what will that help to beef up next year's budget?
Which line item was that?
So it's contract services. So
Contract services.
we utilize like 4-leaf, for example, so we'll
rodents, yeah.
outsource that, so we can actually have more control and regulate that as needed. So it's an example of what contract services can actually do.
The contract service is more for, it was used in previous for external plan reviews for much more complex projects that we have had. It's not necessarily for the code enforcement aspect, but more on the plan review side. The code enforcements are Pam. She was also their retirement. They've increased their hours that they're allowed to have, so she's working that, and as well as our building inspectors, they also handle the code enforcement aspect as well as our regular duties of building inspection.
And my question was more or less to make sure it does assist Pam in some of her, in my view, overworked projects.
Yes.
Exactly why the line item is there.
Thank you.
To assist.
Well, that answers my question, and hopefully we'll see more results. It's very difficult when you're a part-time person in a large city like Marlborough to do code enforcement. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Motion's been made and, did we?
Motion to approve the budget as presented.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the inspectional services budget on the amount of $1,059,787. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to the next item is on page 77, Assabet Valley. I want to thank President Ossing, too, for communicating with the superintendent of Assabet over the weekend, getting in this information. I believe that's an increase of 55 pupils, students in the school, so that's obviously why there's an increase. It's really nothing that we have the ability to reduce. And I want to say they've done an amazing job there when they outlined all the skills that these students, young professionals are getting going into the future, so that was wonderful to see. But again, it's nothing that we can reduce. So I will entertain a motion. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve the Assabet FY25 budget as presented.
Seconded. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the Assabet Valley budget in the amount of $7,532,662. Any further discussion? Seeing none, it carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to page 97, Recreation Department. Any questions on page 97?
Mr. Chair, if the
Mr. President.
Finance Committee doesn't have any, the starting step for the senior clerk at the rec department is at the high end. As you know, she's no longer, she retired after a long time at the rec department, and good for her. But I would recommend a reduction of $5,489 to align that with step one, which we would be hiring a new person at in the rec department for the senior clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Chillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will make that motion to reduce the senior clerk account number 507702, make it in line with step one of the salary schedule.
And what was that amount, Mr. President?
$5,489.
Motion was made and seconded to approve the Parks and Recreation budget with the reduced amounts of the $489. Any further discussion? Council Orr.
Just maybe the mayor can answer it. Was that an oversight, or is there a reason for that?
No, it's just an oversight.
It's an oversight? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, as well.
Motion made and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all in favor? It carries 5-0. And motion to approve the remainder of the budget, which would be, is that the amount of $275,955?
No.
Sorry. $320,945.
955.
Excuse me? $955.
So if I,
$320,955.
Thank you, Diane. Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the Park and Recreation remainder of the budget for $320,955. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to Health and Licensing on page 99. That item, line item has been reduced from the previous fiscal year as well. Council Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not have any questions, but I move to approve the health and licensing FY25 budget as presented.
Motion's been made. I will second that to approve the health and licensing department budget of $423,066. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to page 101, Human Services. And that is basically contracted out. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to accept the budgeted amount for $110,000.
Motion is made and seconded to approve Human Services budget for $110,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, carries. Councilor Vital? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Next up is page 103, Council on Aging. 103. And as the mayor mentioned, the outreach workers position is now put back into the city budget. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I felt like the narrative explained it very well with that position you mentioned. I have no other questions and move to approve the FY25 budget for the Council on Aging as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question I have is, in the past years, the previous mayor used to use EOEA money, Executive Office of Elderly Affairs, at $134,592. It was discussed in the information from the Council on Aging Director. Is that being planned to be used for this budget? And if so, the budget would come down to $26,263 if that's the case.
I believe from my recollection that the monies have been used, so that's why this needs to come back.
There's no further grant money at this time?
Trish can further answer that, but,
Okay.
yeah, we've
Not a
been-
good way to run a department, but at the same time, I was just curious if that money was going to be refunded into the department.
Good evening, Director Pope.
Thank you very much. What we're talking about is the state formula grant.
Yes.
So the city receives $14 per senior in the formula grant. So currently, from the 2020 census, we have 9,678 seniors, which equates to $135,492. So we use that money to offset, except the 3 salaries that are in the city budget. We use all of that money for all of the programming and things that we run through the senior center.
Okay, and so, as the mayor just noted, we've pretty much used last year's portion, so you're looking to run the rest of your department, except for the salaries, by...
The outreach work is moving back onto the city side to ensure that we have enough money to continue our programming.
Well, and I always felt that that was kind of dangerous to be running your department on just a grant, so, but I didn't know if we're expecting that money to come in the next year, so...
We are anticipating at least
$135.
$14 a senior for the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Orm. Motion has been, Mr. President.
Ms. Pope, so if we're taking the position out of the $135,000 grant, what else, are we buying something, I mean, we doing more programming, what are we doing? I assume we're still getting $135,000, and it was funding the position, but now the position is being funded by the city, so wouldn't that leave an extra $53,000 to spend in the grant money? Am I reading that wrong?
It was through the calculations of the auditor's office that the position was moved back onto the city side of the budget.
I'm okay with that, but I thought it was being funded out of the grant money in the.
It is, but like everything that we've heard this evening, costs of everything are going up exponentially, and moving that position back into the city side of the budget allows us to continue the program we have. We run very rigorous fitness programs, programming, we offer events and things. We try to keep it at a low dollar amount for every senior in the city to be able to afford. We do scholarship anybody that cannot afford it. So by moving this position back, we have a little bit more money to enhance the lives of more seniors.
So that's what I wanted to hear, that you have more money to spend on programming because the position's now being funded through the city budget.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Director Pope.
Motion to approve the...
Motion's made and seconded to approve
Yeah, I'm sorry.
the Council on Aging budget in the amount of $160,855. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Director. Okay, so next up is on page 105, Veterans Agent. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank our Veterans Officer for, after reading the narrative, for engaging the younger veterans in the city. I think that's very important at this time, and with that being said, I move to approve the Veterans Department FY25 budget as presented.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. I will second that. Motion is made and seconded to approve the Veteran Services budget in the amount of $231,188. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Brown. Next up is on page 107, Library. And this budget, oh, Councilor Orm.
Yeah, no, when I look at the percentages on the sidebar, I had some questions. The Assistant Director's salaries up 17.35%, based on...
So it was based on an average of what the position entails, based upon surrounding communities.
So, to get that person into the position, you're saying you needed to raise the salary by 17?
We would love to keep the person in the position.
Keep the person, that's even a
So
better
we-
reason,
it's,
you know.
To
but so-
retain.
So a little salary survey was done for that position then?
Yes.
Very
Okay.
much so.
And then just looking at your budget.
Yeah,
it
we
was-
sent down a salary ordinance to change the steps.
Yeah, I remember discussing it, when the
It should
percentage
be,
showed up, it just jumped out at me.
no, it should be
so-
included with this budget, so looking at the steps, we put in, I think, she's been here for 8 years, so we would like to
8 years, wow.
maintain that.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking that you lose that position, just the percentage went up quite a bit. I know we discussed holding on to your employees, so you've answered the question, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Orm. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The head adult services librarian and program outreach librarian that we approved last year, have they been filled?
They have been filled.
When will they're not showing anything off the budget, that's why I'm curious.
One person, her first week was last week, and previously, the other person started the last week of April.
Okay,
So
and
the
I
last
assume they
payroll.
all started at step one?
One position started at step 1 and one started at step 2.
Councils, that's why that ordinance is before us in personnel to discuss that going forward, that we would get a say in what they start at versus the administration.
Thank you, Mr. President. No further,
Motion to approve the library budget as presented.
motion's been made to approve the library budget as presented. Do I have a second on that? Motion's made and seconded to approve the library budget in the amount of $1,263,587. Any further discussion? Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the part-time library clerks, the library pages. No, I'm right the first time, the part-time library clerks. 2 years ago, we spent $73,000, now it's over $200,000. This year is gonna have a $6,000 increase. I was just curious on how do you explain such a dramatic change in just the 2 years?
Sure, in during COVID, most of them were laid off.
Okay.
And so the money was not spent, and it wasn't until last fiscal year that the approval to rehire the part-timers was approved for the opening of the new library. And the increase that you see is due to step increases because everyone we hired was hired at step 0, last year.
All set, Councilor? Thank you, Councilor. Motion been made and seconded to approve the library budget. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to page 110, celebrations. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always love a good celebration, and this one is level funded, even better, so I move to approve the FY25 budget for celebrations as presented.
Motion's been made to approve the celebrations budget line item in the amount of $38,500. I will second that. Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Next up is on page 112, Fort Meadow. You're very familiar with Councilor Ficillo?
I was going to say, happy to approve this one. Growing up on the lake, I know the hard work that the Fort Meadow Commission does regularly, and the folks on the lake are very passionate about it. And with that, I will make a motion to approve the Fort Meadow budget as presented in FY25.
Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the
Mr. Chair, I
Fort-
was hoping I could second it, being on the other side of the lake.
Motion's been made and seconded by Council Orem to approve the Fort Meadows budget in the amount of $32,200. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Good point, Council Orem.
I wanted the council to vote for it first.
Okay, so that concludes the page flipping on that. Now we'll be bringing in the school department, Superintendent Murphy, and that starts on page 65. What did I do with that?
Running now.
Are you doing your... Good evening, Superintendent. Oh, thank you, Mr. Clerk.
So,
Mr. President.
so, Mr. Chair, so I'm going to ask the school committee, we haven't had anybody else do presentations, so you're on the clock.
Okay.
Get it. We've all read the material.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We can bypass it if you like. Okay, I'll get right to it then. Just a little background, our FY25 budget was developed with input from all district administrators, including principals and department heads. Each budget center was allowed an opportunity to make a budget request that aligns with the district's long-term goals. All requests were considered and prioritized by the administrative leadership team. My short agenda tonight will review state funding in Chapter 70 aid, we'll review current budget drivers and several large future items that could materially impact budgets going forward, and we'll conclude with a new four-year funding plan. Another 1/6 of the Student Opportunity Act will be implemented in fiscal '25. This will bring that six-year plan 2/3 of the way through. We have 2 more years before it's fully implemented. Some of the highlights of the fiscal '25 state budget: the foundation budget, which is net school spending here in Marlborough, increased by just over $4 million, or 4.6%. Chapter 70 aid to the city of Marlborough will increase by $1.875 million, or 4.09%. This slide shows the city's history of prioritizing funding for education. We have historically outpaced net school spending by 30 to 35%. You will notice on the slide that this gap had started to close due to significant aid growth in fiscal '23 and '24, but will start to moderate in '25. This slide shows the growth of Chapter 70 state funding of over 244% over the last 10 years. In comparison, the district budget has risen by much less, or 141.8%.
Several substantial cost increase areas are impacting this budget request. These include significant increases in transporting McKinney-Vento, Foster, and our students that attend out-of-district placements. Out-of-district special education transportation is partially reimbursed through the Circuit Breaker Reimbursement Program. However, the partial reimbursement for the Foster students and McKinney-Vento expenses are reimbursed directly to the city. When the expenses rise dramatically, such as this year, the funds must be taken from other sources to pay these mandatory costs. Out-of-district student tuition has also increased substantially. The state has approved increases of 18.6% over the last 2 fiscal years. Ongoing collective bargaining will also impact our budget. The increased rates of inflation over the last few years will increase the cost of staffing our schools beyond the more modest increases of the recent past. Marlborough was one of 10 municipalities that successfully submitted a statement of interest in 2022 and subsequently invited into eligibility with the Mass School Building Authority. As of this February, that phase has been successfully completed. The Richer project was invited to begin the feasibility phase of the project at the April 24th MSBA Board of Directors meeting. The next step in the process is to seat the building committee and begin the procurement process to hire an owner's project manager. Fiscal '25 marks the 5th and final year of our current transportation contract. The district will issue a new request for bids this fall. A new contract starting in fiscal '26 remains as one of the most significant future funding drivers for the district. Based upon area bus bids, we are projecting a minimum increase next year of $1.55 million for '26 that will assume a significant annual increase thereafter. The fiscal '25 budget request totals $75,775,874. This is a 5.52% increase over '24, or $3.7 million in additional funding. The district remains committed to transparent and sustainable budgets. Fiscal '25 through '27 employee bargaining contracts will impact those projections. We currently have 5 bargaining units bargaining. The fiscal '26 projection includes 5% level service plus the bargained increases. A MADA's elective teacher, a registration and parent outreach center increase, 2 additional FTEs, and again, the transportation contract previously mentioned. Fiscal '27 will be the 5% level service, the bargained increases, and the transportation annual increase. And based on the strategy for improvement, we have some headcount additions in the pipeline. Fiscal '28 was left as level service only. Okay. This slide shows a 1-page summary which is in the budget book. I had updated to the new number. I will also note that the only staff additions included in this budget proposal are the addition of a Goodnow assistant principal to increased enrollment at the school, and a second registered nurse there to meet statutory requirements. All other requests have been deferred into future years as we have prioritized level services due to the unknown outcome of ongoing collective bargaining. And the last one. As we move through the budget process, the superintendent recommended a fiscal '25 budget of $76.2 million, or a 5.91% increase to the school committee. As we have begun negotiations with our expiring collective bargaining units, we have subsequently increased our salary reserves. The school committee voted to add several critical positions to address unmet student needs, or a total budget of $76.6 million, or a 6.41% increase. We will require budget reductions to comply with the submitted budget of $75.7 million, or 5.25%. These reductions will total $841,116, or 1.16%. And thank you.
Thank you, good evening. I know, going through the budget, I don't know how many times I saw the word inflation, and obviously the transportation, that seemed to be the theme going on, obviously, throughout the Commonwealth of the United States. I will open that up to any questions by the Council Orm.
Thank you, and again, thank you for your very thorough budget review and future projections. When I was looking, I saw Hildreth's being reduced quite a bit. Is Hildreth closing down, or is it just, what's happening at Hildreth?
Can I speak to that? Hildreth is being used for alternative programs beyond the school day, mainly. So we have 2 programs that are designed to prevent dropouts of students. So a number of our overaged and under-accredited students, it allows them to work during the day and then to come to school at night.
I see. So you're not closing Hildreth?
We are
now?
not, no.
When I looked at the budget, it said it was reduced by 52%,
Yeah.
so it threw me off.
Yeah, did you,
I have found a few positions were in the wrong bucket, so to speak,
Oh.
a wrong account, so that,
So I read that wrong, or...
well, no, you didn't read it wrong. You read it correctly, because we corrected it going forward. I believe I had a custodian assigned there that's actually at ACC.
And you were very clear and good now, but it sends a message to us that your population, your student population is increasing. The other thing, too, is on page 26, it talks about Richer and an April 26th meeting. I only have a couple of questions after that. It's noted that in the paragraph below the picture, the last sentence, it said the MSBA Board of Directors meeting of April 24th. It was supposed to be on that agenda. Did it make that agenda?
Yes, it did, and it's been approved to move forward into
Excellent.
feasibility.
Good news. And page 12, 3.3, it talks about a program priority 3.3, eliminate racist practices, DEI, consultant, diversity. Then it talks about libraries and text, and I wasn't for sure what that meant.
So it means that one of our goals is for every student to be able to see themselves in the literature that we use in our classrooms and have available for them, so that we're diversifying our libraries, so that it reflects our student population.
Excellent. And text, is that something?
Just any books or
Oh,
novels.
books.
Yeah.
I'm thinking text like on a phone, and I didn't know if they had a program. So those are my questions. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other questions? Councilor Landers.
This is not a budget question per se. You know, I'm glad you're utilizing the children's school, but you never know what the future holds. Now, the bigger little school, I think that was a 25-year lease. Is that aspect collaborative over there?
Yes.
Yeah, how far along are we in that? Just guessing. 10, 15 years?
At least 15.
Because that, you might need that someday too. You know, these alternative schools, I happen to be down over during the election season and talking to some of the staff there, and talking to some of the kids. And, you know, it's necessary to have an alternative building like that. And, you know, you might need Bigelow someday, so hope we'll hold on to that, with that C65. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Landers.
Can I clarify something else, too? Councilor Robles, you were asking Mark Gibbs about the staff in his department, and actually 6 of 9 of them are school department employees. Yes. Yes, 6 out of the 9, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to accept the school department's budget at $75,775,874. Make a motion.
Motion's been made. Do I hear a second to approve the school? Motion's been made and seconded to approve the school department budget for $75,775,874. Any further discussion? Mr. President, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess a little concern, when we got the budget last year, the forecast was for a 3% increase. And now we're seeing, it says 5.2, Mayor's letter says 5. That's a lot of money. And we, to me, in my opinion, we fund the schools extremely well in the city of Marlborough. So I would hope that the city council or the finance committee takes a look at that and adjusts it by $150,000 to get in line with a 5% increase versus a 5.25% increase.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was curious, within the document, you have multiple item information that's not actually in the budget, but one of them I wanted to find out about was the capital plan. I know there is no capital in here at all, but I think that if there's a plan by the mayor to bring forward one, the sooner we know about it before this budget is approved might be helpful. So,
We're working on the capital plan as we speak.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being not so removed from the schools, I know it's a very difficult situation to, especially looking at Goodnow with the amount of students per teacher that we have there. And with that, I really wanted to pay some special attention to detail to the budget. With President Ossing, the suggestion that he made of cutting it $150,000, we would still be giving an increase of, and my math could be off, $3,629,000. $3,629,794. It's a major increase that we have right now, and I do have some concerns with approving it the way it is. I think making a cut is a responsible thing to do in this portion because it is a sizable increase. It's almost $4 million that we'll be giving the schools, more than they had in the previous year. So I would, not to say that I don't support, as it is now, but I do also share some concerns over the school budget. Specifically with Goodnow, I know that the addition of an assistant principal at $110,000, I don't see how that helps the student-teacher ratio. That seems to be our biggest problem. And my personal opinion is adding to the top, I'm not seeing a correlation to how that helps with student enrollment.
Can I just
Yeah,
address
go ahead.
that? A number of different issues. The Goodnow School has over 800 students in it currently. And one of the things that we cannot add any more teachers to the building. There's no more space. There is no more space in any of our elementary schools at all. But what they also need is the teachers need support. And so they need to know that if there is a discipline issue or if they're struggling with something, there is someone there that's available to them right away, immediately, for that support. And so this is something we identified as a need. And it is very difficult to say that we are actually adding anything else. And in the long run, one of the things that we physically are doing is we are trading out positions to be able to support that. I know that when we were here last year, we said that we were going for a 3% and that we would be negotiating 5 contracts. So we did not say any number with that, and that is the struggle. We have received, and over the last few years, part of our funding is the Chapter 70 money. So when we're asking for $3 million, or we're not asking for the whole amount because some of it is coming back to us through that funding, we are an urban school district. It's as simple as that. We have significant needs. We need to be supporting our staff. We need to be supporting our students. And we're going to fight for it.
Just a follow-up question. I appreciate that insight.
Yeah.
That's the insight that I think that as a counselor, we don't often get because we don't have that kind of relationship between the school committee being able to kind of talk to one another on a regular basis. So that's what I'm really looking for. Really, my follow-up question to that is, where do teachers look for support at the present moment at our elementary schools?
They have their administrators, and right now in every building, we have buildings that are ranging from 600 to 850, and they have 3 administrators for that. That is basically it. And we will bring in PD. We have some contracts. Services, the Department of Education is working with us and providing extra PD, so that type of, but it's never going to be enough. And so the day-to-day struggles with issues that are going on within their classrooms, they need those people that are boots on the ground.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilor Preciado.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for being here. First of all, I have a lot of friends and acquaintances that are educators as well. They work in schools in Boston and surrounding towns, as well as my wife. She's also an educator. So I know how difficult, times have been for the school system and you guys especially. I just had a very quick question. This is very just estimate real quick. If the Finance Committee does approve a $150,000 budget cut, where would we see that, affect the most?
Any cuts we're doing are going to impact our students. And that's why it is so heartbreaking for us, because we're already looking at reductions. And so any more reductions are going to further impact our students. It's just as simple as that. We're not in any position to avoid it at this point. And neither is any other district, I think, in the state. So we are very fortunate. We know how much support we've received from the city over the years, and we appreciate it, and we're not saying anything different. We didn't ask for more last year. We got what we did. We only ask for what we need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Any further? Oh, Council Landers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I myself, 800 students, a lot of students, and I love their community as you people are. And talking to the staff, talking to parents, the number one thing you need right now in the school. I certainly would support that addition position. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Landers. Councilor Roby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have multiple action steps at the beginning of all of this. All of those are included in the budget somewhere?
So the strategies for improvement, the actions that we want to take?
Yes.
We cannot fund any of our strategic plans for this upcoming year.
Okay, because my total's at home, but it was over $600,000.
Yes, we cannot fund.
None of that is in this
And that's why
budget.
the numbers are larger in the next couple of years, because we still need those things. And so the plans are still in place, but we are delaying funding of some of the steps that we need to take.
Okay, because I was going to offer the $100,000 to move the registration office would be a very easy reduction, but it's not in the budget, so that doesn't work.
Yeah, we've already reduced it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roby. Councilor Fitzgerald?
No, I was just going to say, I do appreciate the answers to the questions, and I think that it gives me a little bit more insight about our schools heading into this, so I know the motion's already been made and seconded. I would be willing to support the budget as is from the school department. I do think that, my main emphasis is the students, but I appreciate kind of having that background of how the administration supports the teachers who are then able to support the students. With that being said, it's a big increase, but I know that you guys do a fine job and that you guys are going to do what's best for our students, so.
Thank you.
Madam, Mr. Chair,
Mr. President?
what's the status of school budget right now? Are you over, under?
Under.
Or how much?
1.4 roughly.
And how many open positions do you have?
Many,
How many?
quite a few.
The difference, though, with the schools, with open positions, is a majority of them have to be filled with contracted services. Students have needs that are written in legal documents, so we still have to provide the services.
I'm not arguing any of that.
Okay.
You're fighting for the students, I'm fighting for the taxpayers that
Absolutely,
gotta fund.
and I appreciate it.
Gotta fund the position. So I've just mentioned to the councils that each year the school committee finishes the year, or the school department finishes the year under budget. They just do, right? And I'll sit here right now and tell you, they're not gonna spend $75,775,000 in the next year. You're gonna have to wait a year to prove that. And if we adjusted it by $150,000 and halfway through the year they find out they need something, guess what this council does? We give it to them. The mayor comes down with free cash, move the money. You're setting a budget that's gonna build on future years. So, you do what you think is right. You heard my request. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good, valid points. Council Roby.
Thank you. Not to belabor the point, but I if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but the money that's left over at the end of the year can be used to offset special education costs going
To
forward.
prepay, yes.
So you would help reduce costs that you may not be aware of because all of those school increases get snuck in before the budget's set, so.
The transportation costs, the out-of-district transportation costs are going through the roof, so we would be able to pay those bills as they come in. We'll never plan to not be conservative with how we're spending our money.
And I appreciate the effort that Councilor Ossing has put into looking at this budget. I think it's hard considering the information we saw, what the school committee asked for, the budget that you submitted, the cuts that the mayor has already made to the budget, the information that's not even in the budget. Going forward, maybe a little scarier, especially if there is, well, if another school is approved, it'll just be a bond issue but I think I'm comfortable at this point with what's there. I'm not on finance, so we'll see where it goes. Thank you.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the school budget in the amount of $75,775,874. All in favor? All opposed? One. Carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Yes. Okay, so that, the number that was in the budget book, Katie? I thought it matched the number up there. Maybe I said 1,000. Did I say 1,000? Sorry. Okay, so that concludes the part of the school department budget. Moving on to the DPW on building and maintenance on page 40. Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening, everybody.
I'll open that to the Finance Committee if they have any questions regarding this line item. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a line item, oh boy. You can tell the night is starting to set in on me, but it was an additional $5,000 for an overtime line item, 51,300 additional gross overtime, and I was looking to see that level funded back to the 30,000. And potentially move monies around during a transfer. I'm just giving you an opportunity to speak to that.
Was that on line item 1920? What line item was that? I'm sorry.
It's
51300.
51300.
Sure. So a lot of the overtime line items are there to try to get them into like their historical, what we usually spend on them. And I know some of that can be from open positions, but we're trying to align that with, it's not all from open positions, it's from what's historically done, like parks or facilities applying for emergencies or stuff like that, so.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. President.
So I would take exception, the historical is always a great thing to say, this is our run rate. But if I took the historical of the staffing, I'd be cutting staffing right now because we can't hire people. So to increase the budget for overtime, really not appropriate right now. It's an easy one that we know they're gonna move money around, and I've got a whole year's worth to show you, and you can look on the internal transfer sheets that I presented earlier today, the mid-year transfers. They'll move money around. So there's no reason, I mean, I understand what the commissioner wants to do, but I don't feel that's the appropriate thing to do, so I would support the reducing that item by $5,000.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to reduce the line item under property and building maintenance, the item number 51300, additional gross overtime to be reduced by $5,000 to make it $30,000.
Motion's been made to reduce the line item 51300 by $5,000. Any further discussion?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the reduction. Any further discussion? Council Orem?
Yes, and just a quick question. What have you spent to date in that line item for overtime?
In
Trying to
that
find it.
particular one, probably close to 30. I'd have to look, though. I don't have an updated.
Hold that thought.
I can try to find it right now, but that's why I'm asking, is if they did already get past the 30,000 and we're still not through the whole year, I would question it. I do agree it's unfortunate that you're lacking employees and you have to use overtime, but we also see that in other departments.
Mr. Chair?
Do you have
Mr.
that?
President,
They've only spent 19,000, they still have 10,000 to go, with 2 months left.
So,
with 2 months left.
19,000, maybe ask for 30. I agree that the 5,000 seems reasonable, based on that.
Thank you, Councilor Orem. Councilor Preciado.
I just had a quick question about the line item of house worker, just a little clarification what that is.
Yep.
Custodians?
Can I, hold on. I apologize for interrupting. Let's finish this one. There's been a motion made and seconded to adjust this item. Finish this one, then go to Council Preciado's one, because otherwise you're gonna lose your motions and not know where we are, so.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the reduction of line item 51300 by $5,000. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Councilor Preciado.
Yep, so I was just curious about that house worker position, and that increase over the past 2 years.
So the house workers are the custodians, so the council approved the increase, so that's what that adjustment is for in the salary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the property and building, oh,
We've got more work.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. Actually, I just have two general questions. First is, under street lighting, 52130, you had 18,000 fiscal year '23, then it's 10, 12. Is that transition, okay, A, is that electric bill or is that equipment?
No, that's equipment. Electricity is all the supply.
Okay, so the street lighting is effectively replacing the bulbs with LEDs and
Yep.
that stuff. Okay, I wanted to get that clarified, I appreciate that. Second is just in general, how many city buildings now have solar panels on their roofs?
So you have the high school, Jarrick, Kane, Middle. We try to get some more on the high school.
Okay, they're showing to be cost-effective in doing it?
They help.
Okay, 'cause just with the electric bill going up, anything we can do to get more into other municipal buildings. Schools are great, don't get me wrong, it's a great, but we have other buildings that could take
True.
advantage of this.
Yep.
Even a couple of parking garages that they could
The
put.
plans aren't as lucrative as they used to be, but we're evaluating them.
Okay, thanks.
The ones we locked into before were very beneficial to the city. Now they're not so good, but we're still trying to negotiate some.
Okay, thank you for that.
Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fiscal year budget for electricity from fiscal year '23 to '24 went up about 9%. This year, you want to increase it 22%. Is this what you anticipate, or is this going to happen?
So if you look at the calculation sheet, the backup sheet and the supplemental, that is the actual cost of '23. So that's the only year we have the actual cost. We don't have '24 all the way. '23 had the old rate all the way through So we have the old rate all the way through in '23, now we're projecting it to '25 with the increased 44% rate all the way. So that's a pretty good number. There's a couple adjustments there, because you have the library, which is new. So you have new units. New units take more electricity. The same thing with Jarrick. We just replaced a lot of units up on Jarrick, so that will be more of a electricity draw from there, so we've adjusted that a bit. So what you have is the '25 budget with the increase per contract in the electricity rate for the whole year now. So if '25's weather is exactly like '23, that should be the bill.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor Lyle. Councilor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. Just regarding the electricity, I'm looking back at the April auditor's report, and we've expended about $1.5 million from that line item. And I know we did transfer in $200,000, but we have $733,000 still remaining. So I'm just $733,000 still remaining in electricity. So I'm just wondering why haven't we been using that electricity?
So the transfer was, there was too much transferred at the time.
Okay.
When I looked at it, what we had done for calculations, they're very complex, I have to tell you that. So you have net metering going on, you have different types of solar, you have net metering, you have smart metering, and the bills don't coincide with National Grid. You don't get the credit at the same time, so it's a tracking nightmare. And different parts of the season, the electricity rate will start going up now with the hot weather. So that's where we'll get into. It's not like a straight line thing to do. So that's why I felt the best way to do it was taking a whole year, trying to put the adjustments where they are, and then taking the increase in the supply and the slight increase in the BIOS for the supply. That was the easiest way to try to come up with it. Trying to track it all the way through is just a nightmare.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I just think that, with that being said, I don't envy you having to try to create that calculation, but I also see it as an opportunity for us to possibly save a little bit of money in the budget.
Sure.
You know, again, if you need more funds, kind of like the president has said many times, I would be happy to support it, just like we did that transfer this year in $211,000. With that being said, I would motion I would make a motion to decrease account number 52120 electricity by $100,000.
Motion's been made, and I will second that to reduce line item 52120. Any further discussion? Councilor Orem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have some questions first, and I mean, it's on the motion on electricity. You show solar supply, and then you show solar credit within your descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain both? Are we getting $890,000 for our supply, or?
So we pay for the solar, and then you're getting a credit on it.
So we're making basically $600,000.
Like I said, it's not an easy. Then that goes on to the N-Grid bill, so it's.
So they don't credit as
The
much.
smart metering's very simple. When you have the solar, it just goes to that meter, but the net metering is extremely hard to track. You have to track all the different levels.
Supplying solar, we don't get it all back in.
We pay for the solar, then you get a credit for the solar.
I can see we're getting less than what we pay for by quite a bit. So, I last year actually suggested reducing a budget line item on energy, and I'm not for sure. I have a feeling the way energy is going this year is we're gonna probably be hearing back from you on a need to resupplement that. So unfortunately, you know, it's just the way it is out there. You've given us the data, so I can't really understand if we are to reduce it. You know, I suppose that's a chance we'll take again.
Well, Councilor Ossing makes a fair statement. We do transfer money because we have open positions. Hopefully that changes and we won't have as much, but you don't know. So you're budgeting. The natural gas went up 50% from last year for half the year. So, but I didn't look for an increase in that. So I'm trying to keep it down as much as I can, but it's a fair statement. We move money, and if the money's not there, then I'll come asking for it, so.
Okay, it's fair. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good point, Councilor. Motion been made and seconded. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much. Just want to talk a little bit more about the solar, electricity. What I understand is, the agreements of the solar panels, we pay for the panels, right? That's a flat rate for the panels? Or how does that,
They're panels. We're just paying for it's a deal.
how does the deal work? I mean, we don't own the panels, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're leasing them from a leasing company, and that's with a flat rate for the solar panels?
No. We pay, the energy they supply, we pay for.
Oh, okay, we pay them for the energy.
And
that
there's
they-
a credit, and then it goes on to the N-Grid bill, and
Okay.
so you're getting a credit from the difference between the N-Grid and the solar.
Yep. Okay, now I understand. Thank you for the clarification.
So backwards.
Thank you, Councilor. Oh, Mr. President.
So if I can make the councils feel at ease, we cut $100,000 out of both property and building maintenance and maintenance schools last year. And the world survived just fine, all right? It's, Council Orem said last year, the part of that reduction is to try to incentivize conserving energy, right? So you gotta put a little stick behind it. The commissioner knows there's gonna be a lot of money moving around in the DPW. It just is, because their needs change. This is the best crystal ball that's good on July 1st, and on July 2nd, it's no longer valid, which is okay. I mean, that's how budgets work. But again, we're trying to approve a budget that we know is gonna be underspent, because if we don't make any adjustments to it and we tax the whole thing, the taxpayer pays for it. You now all have an opportunity to reduce part of that budget. Take advantage of it. I encourage the Finance Committee to move that recommendation
Thank you, Mr.
to.
President. Motion has been made and seconded to reduce the line item 52120 by $100,000. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Now I'll entertain a motion to approve the remainder of the property and building budget. Councilor Facilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve the remainder of the property and building maintenance budget, minus the $100,000 from electricity, and the $5,000 from OT.
I think I get $3,959,064. Motion is made, and I will second that, to approve the property and building budget for $3,959,064. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, so now moving on to DPW Administration, page 79. I'm sorry, Maintenance of Schools, page 67. Apologize. Page 67. Now, I'm thinking, Commissioner, this is another one where energy is a big factor as well. I will open that up to the Finance Committee. Mr. President.
I'll let the Finance Committee go first, Mr. Chair.
Facilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very similarly, looking at maintenance of schools, looking at the electricity line item again, similar process. Like the President said, I think it's an opportunity to both conserve energy and also an opportunity for us to make an impact on the budget. So I would reduce, it's account number 52120, electricity, by $100,000.
Motion is made. I will second that to reduce line item 52120 by $100,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. I will entertain a motion to approve the, Councilor Facilla.
Mr. President, sorry, Mr. Chair, thank you. I will make a motion to approve the remainder of the maintenance of schools budget.
Motion is made. I will second that to approve the remainder of the building maintenance school budget, and I believe that amount is $3,523,867. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to page 81. I'm sorry, page 79. Thank you. Page 79.
Subtractions.
That is DPW administration. This was also one that has a lot of increases with salary increases. I'll open up to the Finance Committee if they have any question. Councilor Facillo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the first line item, DPW Commissioner. I noticed that in the FY25 budget, I believe with the updated salary schedule, it would be starting at step 6. From my understanding, we would be starting that at step 1 per city code. So I would make a motion to reduce that line item by $17,500 to have it in line with step 1.
Motion has been made and I will, to reduce the commissioners starting at step 1, so it'll be a reduction of $17,500. Do I have a second? Motion's been made and seconded to reduce it by $17,500. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Hang on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Roby.
I believe there still is language in the code that allows a mayor to move a person up one step?
2.
2, but we're changing it to go back to just 1. It hasn't been approved yet. So what happens if it is put at step 2 versus step 1? This was a higher step, then I don't have,
So, if I could.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, you technically, per ordinance 125-11, you cannot promote someone into a new position and start them at a step higher than step 1, forgetting what 125-10 says. That's in our ordinance right now. So I understand what the mayor's done, but you can't do it. All right, now, they can go back and try to legally say if I'm wrong, which I'm okay with. If they can prove me wrong, I'm good. But you can't do it. You're gonna promote someone into a new step, or a new salary bracket, 125-11, I encourage you to write it down and go look at it. You can't do it. You gotta start at step 1. You can't start at step 6. That's just, I mean, you're going from a $115,000 job to a $176,000 job. Now, I'm gonna be open and candid. We're approving the position, not the person. Everybody in this room loves Ted, right? Hands down. But we're approving the position. If this was another individual sitting in that position, what would the council's appetite be? Right? So you're approving the salary ordinance if it gets approved, because that still needs 8 votes, but you can't start at step 6. You can't even start at step 2 according to the city ordinance. So, again, it's the position, not the person, and that's a difficult one when we all love Ted.
then clarification, the state law that you're quoting is.
A state law, it's the city ordinance.
Allows them to do 2 steps. We want to change it to only 1.
For a
but it
new
could
hire, they conflict with each other right now, Councilor, is what I'm trying to tell you.
Right, I agree, and unfortunately, I'll say it again, we're doing it backwards, but the ordinance, if approved, would allow the mayor to appoint at step 2, or appoint and give a salary.
As currently written, he has that flexibility and is exercising it as we speak.
Well, he's going higher than that.
For this particular one, but he's using it for other positions.
Right, but I think the motion was to move it to step
1.
Correct. Versus step 2.
Again, if I may, we're not the mayor, we're not asking, that's not what he's asked for. He's asked for step 6.
Right.
All right? And I'm saying by our city ordinance, you can't go to step 2. And I know 110, 125, 10, and 11 conflict with each other. And we can debate it on the floor, which is good, but based on my read is, you can't do it.
Right, but my understanding is with council approval, it can be a higher step. Is that correct?
You would have to ask for that,
Sure.
right? But that's not what's before the city council right now. What's been asked for is not allowed, my read of the city code.
You okay with that, Councilman?
Well,
Council Roby will
I guess
check me. I'm
I'm not okay at moving it to step one, if in fact he's going to put somebody in at step two.
So we don't know who's gonna get it,
Right, but
right? So again, if it's not if it's not the assistant commissioner, it's somebody else, are you still all excited about moving it to step 2, or 3, or 4? We don't know who's gonna get it.
We
That's
don't.
why we wanted to put that, that's why I put it back in to say, give us the authority that if the mayor wants to do it, let us know. And if we think it's a good idea, we're more than happy to approve it.
and that's, I know it's the cart before the horse, but I guess I don't know that anybody coming in with the additional responsibilities would be put at step one, regardless of whether it's Mr. Scott or someone totally new.
We won't know that until we find someone that comes before us and interviews with the mayor.
True.
Thank you, Council. So motion has been made and seconded to reduce Public Works Administration line item to step at step 1. So it'd be a reduction of $17,500. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the budget on the administration. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve the Department of Public Works Administration budget for FY '25, minus the $17,500, bringing the DPW commissioner to the step 1 salary.
Motion has been made. I will second that to approve the Public Works Administration which includes the reduction. I believe that brings it to $672,500 with a motion budget of $672,500. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Brown. Moving on to page 81, DPW and Engineering. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to the property and building maintenance, I was just looking at the overtime line item and just looking to level fund it. So this is line item 51310. And so to reduce it by $5,000 to bring it back to the 15,000.
Actually, we're on,
Am I on the wrong page?
page 81.
Nope.
She's right, she's good.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
think that's right. No, that's the correct page, isn't it? Page 82?
Yep.
Yeah. Starts on 81, but it continues to 82.
Yep, 51310.
Okay, yep.
To reduce it by $5,000 to bring it back to 15,000 to make it level funded. That's my motion.
Motion has been made.
If I may on that one, that's not a historical one, that's an additional need for engineering. So engineering has been putting in more overtime for the Route 20 project and the Main Street project, so that's not a historical thing. We're seeing that this year, so, but that's up to you whether you, just to clarify, that's a different one than the historical one.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. I'm going to let the motion stand just under the knowledge that we can transfer money in the future.
Motion has been made to reduce line item 51310 by $5,000. Council Orm?
Yeah, on that line item, within the budget as of, I think it was 4/30/24, as of the end of last month, they're at $14,388.46. So they're already close to the 15 that was requested. They probably, I don't want to speak for the commissioner, but just from what he noted, they'll probably get to the 20,000, and I know money can be moved around, but I'd like to see us be realistic about it. It's a little different from the other one that was averaging, so I cannot support that, based on the present amount spent and the project on Route 20 that was just mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Facil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also share the same opinion as Councilor Orem. Just looking at, what's been expended already, it seems like we're right up against that 15,000, so I would support, leaving this as B.
Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've noticed that line item 51-240, the temporary part-time help. Last year we just spent a couple years ago we spent 1,600. Now it's already up to 18,000. Can you explain how that's increased so much over 2 years?
We had 2 workers at one time. That's what increased it. We're back down to 1 though now.
Mr. Chair? Do we want to take the,
Yeah.
I see someone getting anxious over it. I agree with them that we'll get really boggled down if we don't do one
Did we
at a
get a
time.
second on?
I'm not going to second it.
All right, motion has been made to reduce line item 51310, the overtime, by $5,000. Do I hear a second? Does Don have a second? Council Vital. Council Vital, motion's been made and seconded, reduce that by $5,000. All in favor? All opposed? It carries. Okay, so moving on to page 84, I'm sorry,
Hang on.
sorry.
Mr. Chair?
If I could, Mr. Chair, if someone had who had the comment on temporary part-time help? You get what you needed for an answer?
He said it was decreased, but if it was decreased, why is it still 18.8?
51240.
I'm not following. Yep, it's 18.8. You're saying why did it decrease where?
Again, 2 years ago, you budgeted for 10,000, we spent 1,600. Then it went up to 18.8 last year, and we're level funding it. I'm just wondering why we need 2 part-time people, if that's what the 18.8 is paying for.
So they're used for part-time workers to do research, like for tie cards, putting stuff into GIS, so doing research like that to get information that can go into the GIS system. If we can get another person, it's a lot of information we can get on the GIS system, like tie cards and things like that, and checking for different things like lead services and things like that we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Councilor Roby?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that all the councilors understand that the reduction of the assistant engineer at $103,700 is a one-year reduction, that there is a plan in place to have an
Correct.
assistant city engineer in the future, so a future budget will bring that back again?
Correct.
If I could, so is that why it's...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is that why it still shows on the org chart then, Ted?
Yes.
Okay.
So the org chart, if you read the succession plan, it's a reorganization. The capital projects manager, the assistant commissioner of facilities is not needed. So part of what's happening is we're taking a look in where does the value in that position. The value is the current assistant city engineer does oversee the capital projects for engineering. He can become the capital projects manager. That does interfaces with contractors. That's his specialty. He can also, for engineering as well as the facilities jobs, help with the procurement. And he will also be responsible, if we ever get a new fire station, a new school, the value in overseeing those construction projects is immense for the city. The money that can be lost or not gain value in those things is huge. And when you look at these positions, you could say, you know, are they worth it, these assistant commissioners? But the value, we have a $35 million budget. And if you look at the city engineer, for instance, you look at, it's coming in at step 3. So what's happening is there are 4 steps now, they're going to 7. So Tom is already 7 years in. So technically, if he transferred, he's technically step 7. So it is getting adjusted. And I can tell you, Tom, if you've seen him, is worth his salary every time he does a project. He's an RLS and a PE. He stamps survey drawings and PE drawings that we don't have to go out, you know, for. The salary pays for itself many times over. Chris Lafreniere is the same way. I mean, we're trying to close down on this Northborough litigation, and he's pretty much made his salary just researching and doing the work he did on the Northborough litigation. So that's my 2 cents for those positions. It's difficult when you say, oh, step 1, they're already in those positions. Chris is already in 4 years, so he'd be going in at 3, and Tom is at 7, going in at 3. So just keep that in mind. That's not like they're new employees coming in at 1. So just that being said.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. President.
So, again, I hear what Ted's saying, but I'm going what the ordinance says, and when you're promoting people into a new position, you can't start them at higher than step 1. Now, can we change the rules? I guess we can, but how I read them right now, you would have to reduce the city engineer's salary from 137 back down to step 1, which is 131, so it's a reduction of $6,000. And again, I remind people, I'll say that, we love Tom. We love Chris, we love them all, but if they're not here and we got someone new that you don't like, now you're scratching your head saying, why did I do this? So you gotta take the emotional piece out of it, and it's the position, not the person. So the council should adjust that salary, because we can't pay him, in my opinion, at that salary. We have to start him at step 1, and I'm okay to apologize on the floor if the solicitor says I'm wrong. But I'm pretty comfortable right now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor Facillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I've said it before, and I agree with that interpretation of the general code. You know, I have it in front of me right now, and for that reason, I am going to move to reduce, it's account number 50640, city engineer, by $6,000, so it would bring it down to $131,000, which is step 1.
Step 1. Do I have a second on that? Motion's been made and seconded to reduce line item 50640 by $6,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. I'll entertain a motion to approve the DPW engineering budget with reductions. Councilor Facillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the budget with the 2 reductions that we've made.
Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the DPW engineering, I believe in the amount of $971,300. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to page 84, snow and ice. I guess it's kind of a light year on that, I guess. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another level-funded budget item, and I will move to approve the FY25 budget for snow and ice as presented.
Thank you. I will second that. Motion's made and seconded to approve the budget item, streets and snow and ice. Any further discussion? Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just out of curiosity, how much have we spent on snow and ice so far this year?
If you look at the budget now, they're ready to transfer, so whatever's in there now is within
Completed?
a few thousand, yep.
So it's
The transfer will be coming down soon.
So $1,651,000, so there'll be a transfer for $651,000 at some point to come out of free cash to reconcile snow and ice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brissette. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the snow and ice budget for $1 million. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to DPW Streets, page 86. Do let us out. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to sound like a broken record, but I am going to move to reduce line item 51310, overtime regular, from the proposed $95,000 to make it level funded to the current budget of $75,000. That would be a reduction of $20,000.
Motion has been made to reduce line item 51310 to level fund that to, so reduction of $20,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the FY25 budget for streets less the $20,000 adjustment.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the Department of Public Works and Streets budget in the amount of, I just lost my number, sorry. Sorry about that. 2, 3, 5, 335, yeah, $2,335,700. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay. That concludes the streets on page 86. Now moving to page 89. Fleet maintenance, page 89. Let me get to that page. Open that to the councils. Any questions? Council Vital.
Being consistent, I'd like to lower the overtime rate, line number 51310 to level funding of $6,000.
Second.
What's it?
Oh.
No, but you seconded it? Motion's been made and seconded. I'm sorry, Council Vital, could you repeat that, please?
Say again?
Could you repeat that?
I would like to have level funding for line item 51310 overtime regular. Reduce it $2,000 to the level funding of $6,000.
The motion's been made and has been seconded to reduce line item 51310 by $2,000. Council Orem?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and on the last one, we just approved the same situation, originally appropriated $75,000. They already, to date, have spent $90,000 to date, since 4/30/24. So they're gonna need to find money somewhere for both the previous one we just approved to reduce, if it happens again next year. So just so the council knows, these are budget line items that, as our president said, they probably can find some money, but it is gonna put them in the arrears in respect to what they've spent already this year.
So, if
Mr.
I could,
President.
Councilor, you are correct, but look at the sheet I gave you. 10 of those positions are open DPW positions. It's not their fault, they can't hire them, but we're under, we can't find them. So there's opportunities to move unspent money in salary line items to other positions. Again, $943,000 we will have overtaxed the taxpayers for because we're underspending those line items in this budget. Actually, we've already taxed them for it. We already set the tax bills out back in December.
And Mr. Chair, I don't disagree, I'm just saying realistically, the number for this line item is already at $99,000. So I agree that money they have from the positions they haven't filled, hopefully those funds are being utilized. I expect that's what's happening presently this year, since you only were budgeted for 75 grand, is that correct? Is that where you're getting the excess money to fund the overtime?
Yeah, we transfer from excess and salaries, yeah.
Yep, that's fine. And hopefully, if I may ask, when you do get those positions filled in, there should be less overtime?
Hopefully, yeah, and some, not others, yeah.
Then it all makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
So,
Mr. President.
So if it makes you feel, just one of those positions, if they're not filled in the month of July, you've satisfied the $2,000 instantaneously. So if you think you're gonna hire everybody on July 1, then we have an issue. If you don't think we're gonna hire everybody on July 1, this is a no, never mind.
Counselor Facil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're currently looking at fleet maintenance, which I have in the April auditor's report for overtime regular. They have spent $3,547 of the original $6,000 budgeted. I think, Council Orm, you may have had overtime regular for streets. Which was, I also made the same mistake when I looked at it, but I will be in favor of this motion because of the fact that we still have close to 62%. We've only expended 62% of that line item.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the reduction of line item 51310 by $2,000. All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Mr. Chair, the Finance Committee entertain a motion to reduce the interim foreman line item, they're not spending it, by $5,000.
And that, I saw that by 5,000, okay. Counselor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will move that recommendation of President Ossing to decrease the line item 51470 interim foreman by $5,000.
I will second that. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the reduction in line item 51470 by $5,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Yeah, Councilor Preciado.
Just a quick question on the educational incentive that you have for 51440. I see an increase in that. What is that due to? Is that due to new hires or?
That's due to new qualifying licenses in the repair shop.
Okay, cool.
Councilor, we're going to take this vote and then we'll.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Get back. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the reduction of $5,000. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Councilor Preciado. Thank you.
Thank you, sorry, I didn't realize. I also had another question about the interim foreman has increased. What is the reason for?
So the fleet shop has four, it's a compact division. So every time one's out, it's a cascading effect. So it's just a lot, and if someone's out on medical, you have that person, an interim foreman, the whole time. So if a foreman's out, the next level down, the mechanic goes up into that position, and he's getting paid out of that line item. Yep.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going down to line item 54810, has a $100,000 increase this year on maintenance supplies and vehicles. Can you explain that?
Right, so if you looked at the supplemental sheet for fleet equipment status sheet, and we went over some of this with the capital. So part of this is, I'm not sure what's gonna be funded for capital either. So we're currently renting 8 pieces of equipment at $29,000 a month. That was during the snow and ice. You can just take a look at what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 have been removed from service. So now you're renting, and then the next part is vehicles needing replacement. So you have these real old ones. Then you go down to major repairs. These are repairs over $10,000. And you can see, because they're aged vehicles, when we're repairing these, like the sweeper, $6,000 at a pop, that you're starting to get into real costly repairs. So hopefully, and I'm very thankful for the council for funding that capital. That's a huge thing. We don't really wanna, increase the operating budget to try to keep the equipment going. We'd rather do it with capital and keep a sustained vehicle presence there. I would say we have one more year of this, then we won't have to increase it again, because then we'll have all the vehicles that we receive from this capital budget, so.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
It did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, motion to approve the DPW's repair shop budget. Councilor Facil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion to approve the budget with the 2 reductions in overtime, regular, and interim foreman.
Thank you. Motion's been made. I will second that to approve the DPW repair shop. That would be an amount of $1,320,000. $1,320,000.
300.
300. Thank you. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, moving on to page 91. Page 91, solid waste and recycling. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another overtime.
I apologize. Did we skip forestry?
Oh, I'm in forestry.
But you said solid waste, I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm on
I did say,
page 90.
I'm sorry, page 91.
Yep.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the line item for overtime, 51310, and I moved to level fund it by reducing it by $20,000.
Motion's been made. I will second that to reduce line item 51310 by $20,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, so that was 5,000. Any further questions for the Finance Committee? For the forestry on page 91? Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there are no further questions, I move to approve the Forestry, Parks, and Cemetery FY25 budget, less the $20,000 adjustment for the overtime line item.
Motion has been made, and motion is made and seconded to approve the DPW Forestry, Parks, and Cemetery budget, and I believe that would be with the reductions of $2,068 and $2,068,050. All in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Alder Smith. Okay, now moving on to page 94, solid waste and recycling. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions about this particular budget, so I move to approve the solid waste and recycling FY25 budget as presented.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the solid waste and recycling budget. I will second that in the amount of $4,461,200. Any further discussion? Councilor.
Quick. It may be any supplemental information. When are we renewing the contract for rubbish recycling?
Next year. Next year?
Next year? Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So for not renewing the contract until next year, why was rubbish collection increased by 5%?
That's the contractual increase.
Okay.
Every
so
year.
Every year contractual
Yep.
agreement. Thank you for the
The
clarification.
recycling went up too, but because we're getting money for cardboard now, we're hoping that offsets it, so we tried to, there'll probably be some money in there, but we'll absorb it.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you, Councilor Doucette. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the solid waste and recycling. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Moving on to page 133. Sewer Service Fund. Councilor Facillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going down to Sewer Service Fund, just looking again, Assistant Commissioner, DPW. Right now, it's at step 3. I would move to reduce that by $6,000 to have it at step 1.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to, for line item 50630, Assistant Commissioner to start at step 1, a reduction of $6,000. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I realized after I got on that tear there, I forgot to answer the question about the assistant city engineer. So the capital projects manager, the assistant city engineer will move to that position. That becomes vacant. Part of the succession plan is to keep that position open till we have a viable candidate. So in this year, we don't foresee it in a year's time, but when we have someone who's a PE can become Tom's successor, that's part of the plan. Mark Dascoli in that position could never become the city engineer. He won't be able to become a PE. But it made a lot of sense that he's perfect for that position to save the city money, and then it opens up the position at a point in time, hopefully within a year, after a year or so, a couple of years, that we can fill that position. The assistant commissioner of facilities will not be filled again. That position is decommissioned. But the assistant city engineer is. That's why we retooled the job description, that, and created the position with the job description of the capital projects manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Motion has been made and seconded to reduce line item 50630 by $6,000. All in favor? Carries 5-0. I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, Councilor Doucette?
Yes, thank you. Just a question about 52935 solid waste.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I missed that in the supplemental, but suddenly, all of a sudden at once, what is that?
That's just a transfer. So what happened when we had We Care, the dark days of We Care, we had, We Care had its own separate, that was part of it, and it had the trash in there because they did our trash as well. And then at some point a few years ago, the trash, Republic's contract and the transfer station moved into its own, and then that was left hanging there. So we're trying to move it into the sludge fund, and as part of our negotiations with Northborough as coming up with the direct cost is retooling our munis budget to make the billing more identifiable where stuff is. So it hanging out by itself just doesn't do us any good. We want to move it into the sewer fund, so that it makes it more like an enterprise fund.
Okay, so
It's just a transfer. If you look there and then you look at
going forward from now, this is going to be an ongoing charge.
It's the same. If you look at the 608-600-652-935 sludge removal, that's where it comes from. It's just transferring the money into a different account line item. So just moving it in the account line
Is that
item.
on a different page, or?
So it used to be in sludge removal, 8600 division.
Okay, so.
So we're
different
just
page,
moving it.
different
It's
part of
sitting
the
there
budget.
by itself.
Oh, it's a okay.
It should be in the sewer fund,
Yep.
like an enterprise fund.
Okay, so it's a transfer from.
Just,
Department A to
just
Department
moving the
B.
same amount, no difference.
Same amount,
Yep.
okay. Thank you for that, appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Councilor Biden.
If there's no further discussion, Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend the budget items minus the $6,000, so whatever, $2,502,000 minus 6.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the sewer service fund in the amount of $2,496,100. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Vital. Okay, moving on to page 136. East Wastewater Treatment Plant, page 136. Open that up to the finance, or any councilors, any questions? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for this particular overtime line item, that one was a request of 23,000. That's a little bigger. I just wanted to see if there was something specific you wanted to.
Right, so that's the on-call program for both of them. So we've instituted a pilot program that's an on-call program. So the head treatment plant operators are responsible for this whole treatment plant, which I suggest anytime you guys want to come down and see the treatment plants, it's a chemistry experiment on steroids. And it's very stressful. And the head treatment plant operators are pretty much taking phone calls all the time. All it takes is someone to flush something down the toilet that creates havoc in this organism that is a treatment plant. And they have to jump through all kinds of hoops to make it work. So it's a very stressful thing. These head treatment plant operators are in demand. There's only so many that have their license. If we lose one of these, we'll end up contracting if we can find someone to run these things. So as part of this, we've instituted people that are trained enough that can come in on the on-call that relieves these head treatment plant operators from being like on-call 24/7 and responsible for these things. I mean, some of the people that retired, I think they're still thinking about these treatment plants in their sleep. They can't let it go. That's all they think about. It's so nerve-wracking. So this is a huge thing that helps them, get some stress relief. So that's basically what that was. And it seems to be working out pretty well now. We had an incident with a power failure and an automatic transfer switch had an error, and the on-call guy was there right away. So it did save us a lot of headache there. So we feel it's being successful.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner.
Mr. President.
So again, I don't mind reducing it. I mean, we're gonna pay them. If they need more money, guess what? We're $943,000 under budget and salary line items. There's money to move around. And again, if we approve everything as is, we're gonna be sitting here and I'm gonna be telling you next year we're $1.5 million under budget. Unless we start on a wicked big hiring spree. Don't see it in the cards right now. So adjusting these now helps lower the tax rate that we're gonna have to set in December and say, how come we didn't adjust the budget, do a better job at this point in time? So, Commissioner's correct. If they need overtime, they are gonna get overtime. They may have to move it from some of their unfunded positions. Okay, we approve that money, that's good. But, that's a huge jump for what we haven't seen proof yet, and the money's there if they need it. They just have to move it around, which they do successfully every single month. So I would highly recommend that it gets adjusted by $10,000.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well said. Councilor Vital.
Just for clarification, what is the difference, Commissioner, between overtime regular and service contracts, or contract services?
Plant equipment down below?
The testing. You were when talking about overtime, you started talking about testing and all this has to happen, and it's really critical. But then down below, we have contract services lab testing. And that's going up 12% too. So we have a 44% overtime and then a 12% increase in testing.
Right. So under that's when we had that power failure, we realized how critical. So our fleet department we go around and service our own generators to save the city. We have someone that goes around and does it. What we found is in the treatment plants, because of the equipment, it's just beyond us. There's transfer switches, and where they go is just too complicated. We can't we can't have this happen again. So this is part of having a generator service plan. That's what's coming out of that, and that's in that line item. It's contracting to have a specialized contractor check this on an annual basis so that we don't have a transfer switch that doesn't, and we have a treatment plant without power.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Ted, were you explaining 52570 versus 53174? One says lab testing, the other one's the plant equipment. So I'm just curious, because I think Councilor Vital was looking at the lab testing. Am I correct, Councilor Vital?
So that also has, so the in-house lab is taken out of that line item. We have in-house testing of all the, and that tests both treatment plants. So that's what that testing is.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to reduce the sewer service fund by $10,000 to the overtime line item for the FY25 budget.
Thank you. Motion's been made to reduce the line item by $10,000. Do I have a second? Motion. Council, motion's been made and seconded to reduce line item 51310 by $10,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve the sewer service fund less the $10,000 reduction.
Motion's been made, and I will second that to approve the sewer treatment fund. Would that be $1,789,430? Motion is made and seconded to approve the amount of $1,789,430. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to page 139, West. Sewer. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So similar to the previous budget item we were talking about, I am going to move to reduce the overtime regular item under the Sewer West Fund by $10,000.
Motion's been made. I will second that to reduce line item 51310 by $10,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Councilor Brown. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the FY25 budget for the Sewer West Fund, less than a $10,000 adjustment.
Motion is, Councilor Flash?
I'm not seconding that motion.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the West Wastewater Treatment Plant Fund in the amount of $1,555,415. All in favor?
Discussions, excuse me, we have discussion, please.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, please. Service contract, plant equipment, goes up 54% from last year to this year, $128,000. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So this is like the East Plant. This is the generator service plan. In addition, what this captures in working on the Northborough litigation to try to capture all the funds, we used to be doing HVAC upgrades through facilities. What we're doing now is there's a lot of repairs that have to be done that we foresee, and we're gonna pull that out of facilities and use that in the actual West Plant. So that's gonna, so it's easily to capture that for the, when we actually
Council,
build
we
Northborough.
can go back to that. Motion's been made to second on this particular,
Okay.
we can go back to that question. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the,
Maybe I'm wrong. I was
Yes.
This is on the entire one.
It's getting late.
What's that?
Hang in there, gang.
So I made a motion and Mark seconded.
Mark seconded. Oh, absolutely, yeah, sorry. Motion's made and seconded to approve the water waste treatment plant budget in the amount of $1,555,415. and $415. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Okay, so now moving on to page 142, Council Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this shows that the change in account or the shift in account that the commissioner was talking about. So I move to approve this salary increase as presented.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second? Motion been made and seconded to approve the sludge removal line item as presented. All in favor? Any discussion?
Thank you. Sorry for not rushing this. Solid waste disposal for both sewer treatment plants, right?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to get that clear. Thank you very much.
So motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Carries 5-0.
Mr. Chairman,
Council Orr.
are you planning to take any little bit of a 2-minute recess and all?
We're almost done.
That concludes, I believe, let me just check, Council Orr.
Water's the last
One more for, okay, one
How
more
about
for you. I'm
finish
sorry.
water and then take a
No,
break?
no, I just didn't realize that we didn't finish DPW yet. Oh, we have the commissioner on the seat.
I'm not coming back.
Oh, Water Enterprise, yeah.
Which one is the next one on there?
Water's the last one on the list.
Yeah, figures. 157. Never cheap.
Page 157. That is Water Service Fund. Any oh, Councilor Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, the line item 52320 MWRA water, that line item is something else aside from the preliminary assessments for the authority, correct?
Excuse me?
The line item is
Yes.
not just the wholesale water charge,
That's
is that
correct.
correct?
It's
Can
not
you
just-
explain what that is?
It's not just the MWA rate increase that was 3.6, it's also the chemicals that we add to the water. And then there's also a fee from Mass DEP that's included in that line item for water service.
Is there a reason for budget purposes why we don't separate that out? Just a little confusing, I know, because when we get the preliminary assessments and the final assessments and we try and kind of look at like what the charges are, that's obviously, since it's called that in the line item, why we don't split it out for chemicals for treatment that we're responsible for?
Yeah, I think it was historically done because we had two sources of water, and anything that was associated with the MWA water was kept in that account. So that's why we did it that way.
Okay. And then my understanding is we're gonna see an increase in our water rates this year?
Correct.
That's correct. What is that increase? Do we know?
The rates?
Yeah.
I can give you what the rates will be. The rates will be, the water will be $8.43, and the sewer will be $9.23.
Okay. So, this was a comment I brought up last year to your predecessor, and Mayor, to your predecessor. These things have a cost. I know everyone's talking about the importance of cutting budgets and reducing them and making sure that we don't build on a rate base when we don't need to. I would argue here is something that we've seen the exact opposite of. Infrastructure, water, and sewer services have a cost, and when they don't go up every year, ratepayers are left, with an unpredictable level of budgeting. We see, time and again, if you have a 0 one year, you got to pay for it. It just is how it is. So I appreciate everybody kind of taking the real charge and the real cost of our water and sewer services. And I would just encourage you to keep in mind that, steady and predictable, as Council President Ossing often says, is what people are looking for. And so, I appreciate you guys taking a look at this and putting the charge in, and hopefully, as we move forward, what we're spending. I would love to see us get to, be able to take in from rates what we're spending on it, so there is a true accountability of it. We're fortunate with the financial position that we're in. Obviously, we can, buttress those costs, but people don't often realize just how much it costs to provide clean water and to take care of wastewater. It's, and the strain for your departments that's coming with PFAS, on both ends of the system, and with stormwater is, incredibly challenging. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
And just to add on that a bit, so we had a professional rate setter in '21 go through all the, as an enterprise fund, go through all the costs, and set the rates up to 2026. That will, we got away from that last year. We're putting us back on schedule with this rate. We have one more year, so within the next year, we'll procure that service again to set our rates again.
Yeah.
Even though we're not an enterprise fund, we want to try to get as close as we can to that, so.
No, that's great. Everyone loves a 0 until the following year, so I appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Navy. Councilor Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the overtime regular, line number 51,310, down $15,000.
Motion's been made and seconded to reduce line item 51310 by $15,000. Any further discussion? Councilor Preciado.
Yes, why is that overtime so high compared to the other overtime?
The water sewers fund, water breaks.
Okay, and that's just the nature of
Yep. the city and. Yeah, and when you have more construction and Route 20s, can lead to some stuff. A lot of it the contract is fixing, but other things can happen as well. But
Understood.
Lincoln Street with gas, Eversource hitting water and stuff like that.
We get updates.
We don't necessarily fix it, but we have to have people out there that inspect it so they do it properly, so.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Preciado. Councilor Orm.
Mr. Chair, this is an enterprise fund, first of all, so it's different from the city budget. Where they're already very close to the number they need to be at to be 100% by the end of the year. They have only $30,000 left in this overtime regular. So if it is reduced next year, if the overtime goes over, the question is, where do you get that money from? How do you go about that? Do you go through the enterprise fund, or do you?
So,
It's,
point of it, there is no enterprise fund. We don't have an enterprise fund.
oh, it's not.
We're trying to get to that point, but we're
Oh.
not there yet. We are pretty close. If you look at our revenues.
Enterprise is like an accounting.
So
We
this
we
is
try to mimic that as much as we can. We
So
don't,
even though it's labeled
not declared an
enterprise.
enterprise, correct.
So it's not. Okay, well, that solves that problem. I guess we can reduce it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Wait a sec, we will be.
Thank you. So motion has been made and seconded to approve the reduction in line item 51310, $15,000. All in favor? Carries 5-0. Good job. I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Facillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motion to approve the water service fund minus the $15,000 in overtime regular.
Motion is made, and I will second that to approve the water service fund with the $15,000 reduction. I think that brings it to $10,425,305. All in favor? Carries 5-0. And what we'll do is, if it's okay with the finance team, we'll take a 5-minute break, and we're getting close to the end. All in favor of taking a 5-minute break? Okay, I'll call the Finance Committee back into session on May 13th, 2024. Next, we will go to the financial accounts to be discussed with the finance team. Councilor Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our finance team for all of the work you've done on our budget. After reviewing the budget for the financial accounts, I would like to make one motion, barring any discussion, to approve the FY25 budget for all of the financial accounts we are to consider, but less a reduction of $300,000 from the reserve for salaries, line item 57820, which would be similar to fiscal year '24 that we're currently in.
Motion has been made to reduce, to approve all the financial line items with the reduction on line item 57820 in the amount of $300,000.
Mr. Chair, what page are we on?
So we're talking about reserve for salaries on page
let's see.
53.
So the reserve for salaries is on page 54. It's line item 57820.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't know if we're in the yellows yet, you know, where we were going by the colors.
Yeah, and Councilor Brown made a motion to approve those ones.
All the yellow ones?
Yes.
Oh, okay, with that
Reduction of the
motion.
reserve for salaries.
You don't want to stay here till midnight, Council Brown?
No.
Okay, I get it now. I see what you know, I just didn't know where you were in the budget. Thank you. So page 53, reserves for salaries.
And it's up for discussion.
I'd like to hear from the mayor, if I may.
Mr. Chair, what line item are we talking about?
On page 54, line item 57820, reserve for salaries.
Mr. Chair, through you to the mayor, I just want to see, you know, the impact that may have.
Yeah, through the chair, had I known that was going to be the motion, I would have said, why are we taking a break? Because we just expedited things. No, neither did I. I thank you for the motion. So reserves for salary, obviously, is always, you don't have a crystal ball. There's union contracts. There are people that will be, employees that will be retiring, so we factor that as well. Anytime there's union negotiations, there's COLA, so that's what all that is figured in. If you want to decrease it by 300,000, I will probably be coming back for free cash, obviously, because with union contracts, you never know how the negotiation's going to go, so we just kind of planned for that, and I will most likely be coming back. So if you guys are okay with that, then I'm okay with cutting it 300,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second? Motion has been made and seconded to approve the financial accounts minus the $300,000 on line item 57820 for $300,000 reserved for salaries. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Good job, Finance. I believe that concludes.
Yeah, so
Mr.
let's,
Thank you, Mr. President.
give us just a minute to do the final numbers so we can vote on a final number for the budget. So my math, and Diane will correct me, it's a reduction of the mayor's submitted budget of 196 million, I forget what the new number was, but we're reducing it by $717,732. So 717,732, and the new what's the new number? So that's gonna give a new budget that the Finance Committee is gonna approve of $195,893,154.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to approve the FY25 budget in the amount of $893,154.
Motion's been made. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the mayor's FY 2025 municipal operating budget. $195,393,000.
Mr. Chair, your microphone's not on.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the FY 2025 municipal operating budget in the amount of $195,893,154. Any further discussion? All in favor? It carries 5-0. Good job, finance team.
Mr. Chair, before you go, so for the councilors and the finance committee, we'll generate the report, we'll get the auditor to make sure we got all the math correct. It'll come back as a report on Monday's meeting, that'll be reported out. So we don't have to vote on it Monday unless there's the appetite to, but it'll get reported out. But if there's any tweaks to it, we'll bring it up at the Monday meeting when the chair issues his report. But that's it. So nice job, finance team and city council, and Mr. Mayor.
And thank you to Ms. Karen and city clerk. I'm sure they will be now canceling those other finance meetings. I will entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? It carries. We adjourn at 10:05 PM.